conversation. At 9 o'clock, we'll be speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of the Council of Governors to talk about counties and their preparedness in the fight against COVID-19. In the 8 o'clock hour, we'll be speaking with the Governor of Makueni County, also to talk about county preparedness and COVID-19. But also, of course, remember, the gentleman has expressed interest in becoming the President of the Republic of Kenya. And going by what Njeri Thorne was telling us, that he doesn't see anybody. We'll ask him, are you the one?
It was very controversial of Njeri to say that. I don't know where that came from.
We'll ask him, are you the one? In the 7 o'clock hour, Governor Mohammed Kuti. So today is just about governors, Governor Mohammed Kuti of Isiolo will pass by as he also goes for another interview on KTN News, but he'll be with us for a couple of minutes. We'll also talk to him about the National Emergency Response Committee, of which he's a member, and the measures that they've put in place going forward now with the easing up of the restrictions on the fight against COVID-19. Let's begin from where we always begin. COVID-19 in numbers.
Right. Fellow Kenyans, yesterday, in terms of what was found, 278 more cases in the country, putting the national tally so far in Kenya at 8,528. The cumulative number of samples tested in Kenya for COVID-19, 196,508. So just under 200,000 tests have been done in the country so far. Many have deemed it a paltry amount, a paltry figure. Either way, number of people who have died from COVID continues to rise, 169, period. And then 2,593 people who have recovered from COVID. In the world now, over 12 million people, 12,164,723, with 552,046 deaths, with 7 million people having recovered from COVID. Right. The United States now well over 3 million cases, 3,158,932, with 134,862 deaths, unfortunately. The numbers in Brazil continue to rise, 1,716,196 with 68,055 deaths. India, still up there, 769,000 cases so far with 21,144 deaths. Mexico, now again, looking at these numbers, having been tabulated over the last 7 hours, 6,995 cases in the last 7 hours with 782 deaths. So it still continues to be a trouble spot. And they still continue to see an increase. Now the total number of cases in Mexico standing at 275,003. Okay. Spot check for China. There are a few cases here and there. They've still been able to maintain or contain those numbers, as it were. 9 new cases in the last 7 hours. Having looked at the highest number of cases that they have recorded ever since they reintroduced the lockdown in late May, has not gone beyond 25 in a day. So there's still, the number. So whereas at the end of April, they were still at 83,000. And they still are at 83,000, albeit that they're 83,581. So they've not even crossed 500 new cases ever since they introduced the second lockdown.
Yeah. There are people who have argued very many things about China. Oh, China could be hiding its numbers. China could be doing everything else. But I think that argument, we can also find arguments to counter that. Looking at the kind of information that keeps emerging from China. You see the new diseases that are reported. Oh, there's a bubonic plague that's been reported somewhere in China. There's a new flu that's now, what was it on? It's on pigs.
Yes, it was pigs.
Right.
Transmission from pigs.
Tells you about their monitoring system. Tells you about the robustness of their healthcare system and how it's quick to monitor, how it's quick to take action, how it's quick to report. Even if we go back into the controversy of the doctors who were raising issues about coronavirus late last year and the action that the government took, it's still talking about they have a system that is constantly checking and being able to report.
The question I would ask is, who is it that is giving China bad press?
It's everybody else.
Yes,
across
because
the
everybody
Atlantic.
else, yes, exactly. It's America taking pole position, and then maybe some of the other countries in the West.
Yep.
You see, they begin from the point of view that they are better than everybody at everything else.
Yeah.
And so if somebody else comes up and appears to have a better handle on these matters than they, it usually doesn't sit well. It doesn't sit well. And they'll fight it.
There's gonna be that.
Or they'll fight it.
Something else that I noticed in the statistics, if you could go back to that page, Nduh, India, a population of 1.3 billion people, and the number of cases that we are seeing there, the number of deaths, yes, despite being in the third position because of 769,000 cases, but look at the number of cases that have recovered. Total recovered cases out of 769 total cases is 76,000.
Right.
And the death per 1 million population, 15. Compare that to the States. Death per 1 million population in America is 407.
Yeah.
Brazil, 320. Peru, 338. Russia, 73.
Spain
India,
and the UK at
15.
607 and 656.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
So they're doing very well.
Yeah.
It's just that they are many people.
There are very many people.
Many
For a
people.
country of 1.3 billion, seeing that in every 1 million people, only 15 testing positive. Only 5.
only 15 are dying.
Yeah.
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 And
Yep.
then, of course,
Yeah.
the robustness of their health system
Yep.
is not in doubt. What measures have they put in place? Because at this point, Corona is going to be with us for a
For a
while.
while.
And we can't really afford to go the China route. Is that the only way to prevent widespread transmission? So what lessons should we be
Actually, why
thinking
can't
about
we
as
go the
Kenyans?
China route?
In Kenya,
Yes, why?
right? So, well, if we were to, is that the only
Like a
way?
proper
What are they
total
doing in India?
lockdown.
Well, let's
What-
look at a couple
which
of
countries
months
are
ago
doing
when
well?
we spoke about we spoke to actually somebody from a government organization in India, and what did she tell us? One thing that came out very clear was their messaging from the beginning was not fuddled at all. People knew what it is that they were supposed to be doing. We saw pictures then that spread globally then about what the citizenry did in terms of social distancing, in terms of hygiene and such. The messaging in public sphere was, number one, undiluted. It was clear. On the mobile phone, immediately they started to send out messages in terms of what they wanted people to do or not do in terms of the spread of the disease. In public market squares, where people would normally, the population would be packed, still people were able to maintain social distancing, for example. So what they were able to do then, from what we were told that they were going to roll out and what was actually being practiced, I'm not surprised that the numbers are what they are.
Right. So they
and
didn't
they also
institute
did-
the lock.
They did.
They did. They instituted a lockdown.
Lockdown?
And even with the lockdown, you had their government, yes, did provide for people who were less advantaged.
Right.
That they did. And I think it's still going on.
And there are very many issues that came up with the lockdown. So you've locked down a huge city like Delhi,
Right.
where a vast number of the population is actually migrant population from other parts of the country. They live in the lower income parts of the city, and they were trying to live.
Walking.
Yeah, and you saw all those videos and photos of people basically just walking
Right.
kilometers, tens and hundreds of kilometers, just trying to get back to their shags.
Right.
And remember,
But there was lockdown.
India has a devolved system. So the states or provinces or counties
Yeah.
have the mandate and the responsibility of looking after their people. Now, perhaps we ought to look at what the Indians are doing with their devolved system, because this success is within the framework of that devolved
system.
system.
Yeah.
And I think the other issue, like Eric mentioned, is the food. They ensured that there was no want for food, no lack for food. And possibly their devolved system also has the community-based structures to make sure that food gets to those who need it.
Oh, that they have an extremely serious community engagement system. Oh, they certainly do. Anything that you think of that is medical is cascaded to the level of the village.
Right.
And there are people who are trained and who... Remember, if you look at Silicon Valley in America, the one country that has exported perhaps one of the largest numbers of people who are experts in that field.
Yep.
Is India. India.
They have a very highly developed higher education system, and they have a very highly developed healthcare system. Yes, and it's not in one state; it's right across their country.
And picking on that issue of having a very strong community health system to the lowest level, one of the concerns with the universal health care program that's being pushed here is that it's very top-down. And experts have said you really can't afford to give universal health care when you're putting money at referral level. You really need the lower level to be very robust. Otherwise, you can't, that system is unaffordable because people must go fast for health care in their dispensary, be able to get referred maybe to then the level 2. Level 3 at county should also be strong enough. So I think there are lots of lessons.
Even wealthy nations who could be said to have that sort of system have staggered it. They didn't sort of like, it wasn't everything at the same time. Piecemeal until they got to where they wanted. And these are countries who have means. Yes. Now, unfortunately, ours, the talk often supersedes what actually needs to be done.
There's a lot of talk,
Yes.
and the action is not commensurate with the
No,
talk.
it's
But
not.
also, I think, in the design of our universal health coverage, because we spoke with Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, who, even before becoming the CAS, was working a lot in the design of what needs to be done in the universal health coverage, they actually talk about it the other way around. They say you need now to work on the community level, and getting the community health workers, getting the community health volunteers, the local health facilities working. The county, the pilot counties, and Mohammed Kuti, if he joins us, we're going to ask him because he was among the pilot counties. They looked at that. How do we start making sure that these dispensaries, this healthcare, health facilities at the local level are working?
I think that's where we're going because, I mean, the same thing when we talked to, the DG of Njeri County, she told us the same thing as, again, a pilot county.
Yeah.
However, one thing that they were focusing on was making sure that they brought in the community and those who were known in the community, first of all, who may have been in the medical practice earlier and then retired, but then bringing them back into the system to be able to help and then giving them something in terms of a stipend that they would be able to not really not live on at all, but, as a token to encourage
To facilitate
them to
them
continue.
also.
Because then what happens is that you have people in the community who are trusted. People are likely to tell them what they're ailing from. And that then helps them to inform decisions that they make.
Countries that have robust community-based healthcare systems use such personnel because these are highly trained people as resource personnel who train others.
Yeah.
What they do is they focus on lay people being trained in certain basic things.
And it was basic things, taking a temperature,
Yes.
drawing blood, very basic things that you would ask.
Let's take a quick break. 17 minutes after 6. We're looking at the weather shortly. And I would like you to read the newspaper with us this morning by going to your mobile device, dial star 550 star 2 hash. That's star 550 star 2 hash. With only 20 shillings worth of airtime on your mobile phone, you'll be able to read today's Standard. And what it will ask you to do is open a link. When you open that link, it gives you the options whether to just get today's paper at 20 bob or subscribe for papers for an entire week or for a month. If you just choose today's or you choose whichever, you'll be able to read today's paper. And we have an opportunity to give you 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime if you answer one of our questions. So for now, get the paper and then read with us. Star 550 star 2 hash. 18 minutes after 6. Let's take a look at the weather. Good morning.
We'll see highs of 23 and lows of 13. It's likely that it'll be overcast for most parts of today. Taking a look then into Njeri at 14 degrees, it's mostly cloudy. Highs of 22 and lows of 14. In Nakuru, partly cloudy as well. Highs of 23 and lows of 12. Eldoret will be a rainy afternoon with highs of 21, currently at 13 degrees. Mostly cloudy conditions this morning. Kisumu at 19 degrees will be partly cloudy through the day. Highs of 28 with a chance of showers later in the afternoon. Kakamega promises to be wet as well. 25 and lows of 15. Looking into Mombasa, light rain showers already coming down, likely to go into thunderstorms later with highs of 28 and lows of 24. It's overcast in Malindi at 24 degrees. It'll go into a session of a high of 28 and thunderstorms later on, coming down to a low of 24. Stepping out of Kenya into Kampala will be a rainy afternoon, highs of 24 and lows of 18. And in Dar es Salaam, 23 degrees currently, mostly cloudy conditions, going into an afternoon of rain as well, with highs of 28 and lows of 22. Let's look down into Johannesburg, where it's mostly cloudy at 8 degrees. We'll see highs of 16 and lows of 6. In Lagos, it's partly cloudy at 24 degrees. Showers expected anytime now, highs of 28 and lows of 23. It is still Wednesday night in New York City. It's clear skies, however, at 26, likely to go to a high of only 28 and lows of 23. 17 degrees and cloudy in London. We will see showers later with highs of 21 and lows of 12. And for now, in Paris, 18 degrees and clear skies, highs of 31 and lows of 18.
Minutes after 6, it's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Well, it's in the room this morning is Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, CT Muga, Njeri Thorne. CT, today's proverb.
The words of the elders do not lock all the doors. They leave the right doors open. This is Zambian saying. Let me repeat it. The elders...
Zambians are wordy, ati?
Yes. Wordy kabisa. The words of the elders do not lock all the doors. They leave the right door... What doors? Door open.
It's also not very lyrical or poetic, but okay.
The words of the words or words?
Words dunia za.
Of the elders.
Not ya, za. Of the elders. The world in which they inhabit. Yes. Not all the doors are locked.
Leave options.
You leave one. Yes. Yes. You leave an option.
Have options on the table. Okay, before we start taking a look at the newspaper headlines, we'd like you to do that with us by dialing star 550 star 2 hash on your Safaricom device. 20 shillings worth of your airtime and you get to read the paper. When you do that, go to page 6. On page 6, there are two stories today on page 6 of the Standard. One is that teachers are getting their salaries despite being idle. We'll discuss that in detail. And then the second story is about clerics in Nakuru who are rejecting the age limit for worshippers. This story is quoting one particular bishop and who's been photographed there. We'd like you to look at that story and tell us the name of this bishop who's been photographed talking to the press yesterday. The section of Nakuru church leaders rejected the new guidelines set by the Interfaith Council appointed by the president to come up with a framework for the reopening of places of worship. Under the Nakuru Christian Elders Council, the cleric said limiting the age of church attendees is discriminatory. We totally disagree with the Interfaith Council for limiting church attendance to those aged between 13 and 58. It appears that the council made a decision from the office perspective and not based on reality. This is according to the bishop that we want you to find the name. The bishop said, the reality on the ground does not agree with the council's recommendations. Most churches comprise of people above 58 and young children. I'm 70 years old. I have no underlying health issues. Why deny me a chance to go to church?
Therein lies the problem. These rules exclude him from running the service.
And yet he is the bishop.
Shame. And I think you mentioned this yesterday when you were talking about the non-mainstream churches and the drama that's likely to ensue. Sure enough.
Now, the good bishop perhaps needs to understand that his age comes with, should we say, certain limitations.
There are underlying conditions already just because of your age.
That's why I'm calling them limitations. Now, he may not think they're important, but they actually are important. Yes. In fact, what those in good medical care are now doing for people who are that particular age bracket, what they do is they give you something which is equivalent of a flu shot, okay, which can sustain you for a certain period of probably up to 6 months. So it means you have boosted your immune system. So yes, so
Oh, yeah?
yes, indeed.
So this is a good practice that we need to...
Well, not many people know about it, but it's the
Why
reality.
has government told us, you know...
Which
Go get a
government?
flu shot.
Okay,
Specify
what
which
am I
government
saying?
You're talking about.
What am I saying?
No, it's
All right.
good. You're saying which government?
Yeah.
You to Kufu.
You know.
The one we have.
One of the other clerics also who's a member of this association, Dr. Charles Muga, is saying this thing of limiting the number of people allowed per session is also wrong. There are some churches that are big enough to accommodate more than 100 people.
That makes sense.
Then have many services, for heaven's sake.
No, but that makes sense. If you've got a 500 capacity, the principle is social distancing. So
So a 500 capacity, 100 is the maximum.
Okay,
if you
you
think
have a
about it.
1,000 capacity. But I guess when they looked at it, very few churches have
Yeah.
a 1,000 capacity.
The thing is,
so it's a principle.
What you're hearing, not even the principle. The arguments revolve around what they're accustomed to. And that's what they want to go back
Behavior
to.
Yep.
change.
Yep.
Behavior
It hasn't
change.
occurred to them that this thing has changed and it's not going back. This change is with us to stay. So you adjust.
Just
You know,
adjust.
As you say that, the point that was raised again by Governor Mutua when he was here about counties doing education. At this point, by the way, the behavior change program has to move to the counties. And counties need to have conversations with these kind of people.
Yep.
Because the county is close enough, they know all their churches,
Not only that,
all their religious institutions.
one of the things that the government, or when I say government, I mean serikali tukufu, and I also mean the less tukufu serikalis of the
Serikali
counties.
ndogo.
Hey,
Yes,
wacha kusema less.
they're less tukufu.
Can you be constitutional? There is no less.
Believe me, they are less.
They are not
When
less.
you are dependent
Based on
on
what?
someone to give you money,
Okay.
you are less.
They are not dependent.
You are less than
Those
them.
are they are
So-
not
so
dependent.
serikali-
Those are illegalities.
I am
Constitutionally
serikali
hakuna.
ya Nairobi na serikali ya nini?
Yes.
Ya Kenya.
Ya mikoani.
Yes.
You know, I speak of the practice. They are dependent. Constitution, being what it is, ni mzuri, but they are dependent. All these debates we keep having around money would not arise if they were not dependent. The debates we have, the judiciary has with the executive, same thing, but let me not digress from what I was saying. The need for the government to have an understanding that these things have changed and they must change to understand and accommodate these changes, it starts there. The conversations that we're talking about, these are conversations that the church ought to be included in. Not at this level that you hear. No. The level of the community engagement person, the community health worker. That's the level at which the churches should be engaged. Because a lot of the things that you hear sometimes people saying may be out of an absence of knowledge about certain things.
I'd even put it a different way, City, as you were speaking, the point that Nduh made about India and their clear messaging. The church should actually be part of that messaging.
But they need to be
Obviously,
informed
right
first.
now they are not. Right now they are not
That's
on
what I'm
board.
saying. You start
So
from
we need
basics.
to do good, clear behavior change communication and win them over so that they can become champions. Recognizing that really what this pastor is saying here is maybe an economic argument. Do you see?
It's all about the money.
But let me ask you.
It could be about livelihoods. If people
Does
don't come to
Sunday-
church, they
But
are not
also-
sending tithe via M-Pesa.
But do Sundays have fewer hours than the rest of the days of the week? Think. Start your services early. Have many services. What prevents
Have
you
10
from having many
services in a
services?
day.
But if he doesn't
But
have
you
a
see,
structure and he's
if
the only
half-
one who
if
can
half of your
pastor,
congregation will not be able to come to church,
The
even
ones
if
with
you
money.
have 20, Right? Remember, in very many of these places, especially in the rural areas, it's actually the people who are older that go to church.
Brother, it's not just rural.
Even here in Nairobi.
Even here,
Yep.
it is old men, then women, then children.
It's a very interesting situation, by the way.
So
COVID
this
is such a
58 and
game
above
changer.
is basically locking out very many people from going
Yes,
to
it
church.
is.
And we can conclude or reasonably conclude that it's an economic thing. It's about numbers. Because if it is about reaching your congregation, you can reach, especially he's in Nakuru, you can reach them. Nakuru has free internet. The government offers. By the way, they do. The government set up free internet. Where? Usicheze na serikali za mikoa.
How far does it go?
Yeah, well, I'm assuming he's in town. He's holding a press conference and he's been photoed. You think aliitana kule
You
kwa
see, this is
Bundu?
why when you mentioned they have internet, we simply just kept quiet.
No, the point-
and said, okay. we're
Point
gonna
I'm
internet.
making is that a lot of services are being, a lot of people are getting their Sunday
Spiritual
service,
nourishment.
spiritual nourishment online. Obviously, congregants are then not doing their tithe online.
Actually,
There are very many challenges that come with that. Yes, many churches are actually putting their services online, but you've got to remember that the person who's consuming this is spending.
Already.
There's data charges.
Yeah.
You're not just going to be able to log in and watch for free. So there's what we're considering data charges that if already your economic situation has changed, are you going to spend money on data to watch church
That's true.
on your mobile phone?
number two,
So how do we have conversations that are real about these realities?
the thing is, you acknowledge and determine what these realities are first. Okay? For every segment of society, the reality manifests itself in this way. What needs to be done is not confusing. It's fairly straightforward. Now, to get a way of communicating so that it is effectively understood. It is good that the Minister for Health gives us reports on a daily basis. That is all good. But believe me, it doesn't serve the purpose that they perhaps think
It doesn't
does.
cut it.
No, it doesn't.
Unfortunately.
It
And
doesn't.
if I just briefly, because I know Eric is giving me the eye, but it's something that you see, you keep going back to CT. The fight against HIV started, to be very honest, with a lot of muddled communication.
Wasn't it just?
It was, nobody knew what was going on. Here's a disease that's decimating populations and societies. Entire villages are being wiped out. And then out of the blue, there was the 3-letter messaging that came out, and it resonated with everybody. And it was like a light bulb moment. And everybody switched on at that point and said, okay, this is then what we are supposed to do or not do. And it was clear. And I think the same thing would carry on here. If the messaging was very clear from the very beginning in terms of what needed to be done. And even when, because it's a developing scenario and we don't really understand every single element of COVID, as things develop, again, we need to go back to the messaging. Because had messaging been clear in terms of what needs to be done, we wouldn't have, maybe such a terrible situation in some areas where
The push
people
and
don't
pull
really,
that we have.
Exactly. People wouldn't have to now start dealing with, okay, so now not 58, 59, not 70. What do we do in these cases? But, and that's why this communication and messaging is very important from the onset.
Completely agree. But also, how do we have the livelihood conversation? Because in this case, the livelihood conversation is masked as a spiritual conversation.
You see, why I brought in the government was because if you think that this is a health issue and you're relying on doctors to communicate, you've already missed it. Doctors are not trained to communicate. That's not
their job.
that's not the area of
brief.
strength.
Unless it's Mercy Korir,
Yes.
who's trained as a doctor and trained to communicate.
No, Mercy Korir is what you call the that percentage that forms the exception.
outlier. The
Yes,
outlier.
Completely.
Yes.
Anyway, let's take a break. 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Remember, we are asking you to read the standard newspaper on your mobile device today, *550 *2#, and then go to page 6. On page 6, there are 2 stories. One is about teachers. The other one is about clerics rejecting the age limit for worshippers. It's quoting one person who is the founder of Pema Victorious Churches. He's a bishop. He's also been photographed there. We'd like you to call in and tell us the name of this particular bishop. He is a bishop. He's been photographed in this story. 0719 012 600. A chance for you to win 1,000 shillings worth of food.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
It looks good on Juja Road this morning, and if traffic is actually flowing very smoothly, don't have a problem on Outer Ring either. If these are all indications of what is to come, then I think we've started on a good note. Kitengela traffic is moving very well onto the Greater Mombasa Road, and it's not giving us any issues so far. So good. Gong Road, coming off Langata Road, getting into the CBD, no headaches right now. Thika Road is building up, however, all along Survey and then towards the underpass, but it shouldn't be too crazy from where we see it. If it happens where you are, let us know. Spice of MKE, let us know what you see. Trying to get traffic moving, or trying to get you moving as you sit in traffic, or at least send some patience if that's what you need. Let us know what you see.
The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. The live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke, and our digital platforms, social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice
There seems to
FM.
be some problems at KEMSA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, which buys drugs for all public health facilities in Kenya, is on the spot after a special audit unearthed procurement and financial irregularities that put at risk over, guess what, 100 billion shillings of donor funds. A special audit of the parastatal conducted from October 2019 has recommended an overhaul of the entire procurement system at KEMSA and wants a new accountability system that has an end-to-end supply chain visibility platform installed to prevent losses and wastage. It is one of the most disturbing findings of the review. It has emerged that despite being given the monopoly to sell exclusively to government agencies, KEMSA has been overcharging the counties by up to 77% for some essential drugs. In non-pharmaceutical items, it had a freer run and was overcharging counties to as high as 4 times the market price, raising queries on just why counties need the agency in the first place. It lends credence to allegations by the Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe that his ministry is a den of thieves run by procurement cartels. The joint audit report done by the United States Agency for International Development and the Global Fund that mainly fights AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria has documented several malpractices at KEMSA, among them stock management challenges at its warehouses.
So, did KEMSA invite these two organizations to conduct the audit? Did the two organizations, out of their own volition and goodwill for the people of the Republic of Kenya, start the audit? How do we end up having USAID and who else? And the Global Fund conducting an audit?
Because
of
They give them the money,
yes,
to do
So-
what they are doing.
You
So
and
they
in
have
and in some
the owners.
cases they actually provide the drugs
Yes.
that these people are supposed to distribute.
So this audit is well within their purview.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's within their purview. It doesn't mean that because you've donated, therefore you have the purview to do that. So what is it that made them start doing this audit? And what were they auditing? Is it the system? Is it the procurement system? Is it the
Are
distribution
you asking
system?
if this is a normal audit or
Yes.
is this something that was spurred
Yeah,
on
it
by
was
some?
triggered by, what was the
we can
trigger?
speculate. You know, the big HIV program is coming to an end. So this could have been an audit as they,
It's like an exit.
an exit kind of audit. But it's not the first.
Let me just give you a bit of information before you go to Njeri. In the two development partners conducted usually they conduct separate audits. I beg your pardon, but this is the first time they have undertaken a joint audit, and it was initiated last October, and the report is dated December 2019. They officially transmitted the report electronically to KEMSA on the 4th of May, and they requested the agency to set up an official meeting to consider its findings and agree on how the recommendations would be implemented. So it's something that they normally do.
They normally do
Right.
this.
Right.
Okay.
It's not the first time. SID and Transparency International, some 2-3 years ago, did an audit similarly. And the same issues were raised in the mainstream
keep
media.
cropping up.
The Council of Governors has raised issues around KEMSA. It's one of the contentious issues in terms of control of functions between the national and the county government. And because we'll be having the CEO, maybe we can ask for clarity in terms of why are counties
being overcharged.
Where are they on this?
Why are they required to get the drugs from one supplier?
Yeah. There was a question about economies of scale.
Yep.
There are some medicines apparently that need
There's
to be
argument about
refrigerated.
economics of scale, quality, insurance about quality.
But there's also a challenge around the
And-
composition of KEMSA.
Yeah. Now I think the conversation that they should be having is about the composition of KEMSA, not looking at it
answerability.
as a national government body, but as a country body, as a state organ. It's an authority. It's established by law. So maybe they should be
It's a good
reviewing
one.
such kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, despite the state corporation receiving billions of shillings and having a monopoly to supply all public health facilities with drugs and other commodities at a higher price, the corporation is almost bankrupt.
So that speaks of mismanagement. In
Yeah.
fact,
There are very
state
many
corporations
Very
are
many
a
issues.
big drain and a big channel for corruption
Yep.
in Kenya. And their accountability structure doesn't work. And we are using a broken model because government continues to set up. There's a report that, immediate first thing Uhuru Kenyatta did when he got into office was he got an audit of all these
The state corporations.
It wasn't implemented.
It wasn't looking good.
Yep.
Yeah. The dams scandal, was the Kerio Valley, is it? Regional Development Authority that was supposed to have been scrapped. So these institutions are where politicians appoint their political cronies. So they've got that negative tag, and their performance has not been good.
And
so
also the big entrepreneurs. For example, when you're talking about KEMSA, you're talking about Big Pharma and the rest. Very easy for you to control the market. You're dealing with only one. The whole idea of KEMSA would be that the exact opposite of what this audit is telling us is what should be happening. Drugs should be costing 7 times cheaper than the market price.
Yes,
Something like that.
That's
But
what
now
it should be.
it's the other way around.
But how hard is it to disband? And like you're saying, maybe it's big pharma, because how hard is it for 47 counties that have a function to disband and demand an institution respond to their needs?
Yep.
Right. And
Whose
Folks,
interests are you?
remember,
Who are you talking?
Health
Whose
is a
interests?
devolved function. Huh?
Yep.
Are we saying that the counties must get drugs from KEMSA? This I don't think is entirely true.
That's the regulation so far.
There's a national law.
No.
That all
What
public,
exactly does that law state?
all public
What
facilities.
happens in terms of practicality? Okay, maybe we'll get the facts. But what I know is I'm not sure whether this has gone to court, but it is one of the issues that Council of Governors has been at loggerheads with the national government about. And this is the point that we were discussing yesterday. When you look at counties, you have to remember that national government has an enabling or a disabling hand.
What I know the counties pitched a fit about were the equipment that they hadn't been consulted in purchasing, and equipment that many counties
Management
did not
equipment
even
service.
find that they were
The
useful.
leasing
MES
issues,
The
yes.
MES
Yeah.
story, okay? Now, this isn't the first time KEMSA is in the news for malpractice.
Even before devolution.
Long before devolution.
Yep.
In fact, the stories were worse.
Some of these bodies, just because of what they do, like you see, KEBS, the other day we were talking about KEBS. How many MDs of KEBS in the last 5
man, they have a
years?
serious turnover.
That's serious turnover. Why? It's because of the commercial side of things. Same thing about KEMSA. I think me on principle, I like the idea of everybody getting the drugs from this one institution. I like that idea because it gives us some sense of control and also it pushes away some of these underhand deals. Can you imagine some big company coming to negotiate with one county?
The Catholic Church and some associates and have a similar setup. It's called MEDS. Now, they supply medication at the level that you are speaking
Yes.
of. And the reason why people prefer them is because the medication is of the sort you want, not necessarily generic, but it is very reasonably priced.
Yep.
So it makes sense.
So the point you're making is that there are options that the counties could have opted out of
I am
cancer.
saying
We
there
will
are
find
options.
out
I
why
am
they haven't.
taking this discussion further and I'm saying this hike in the price doesn't begin and end at KEMSA.
Yeah.
That's what I'm actually saying. I am saying that there are other people even within the counties that benefit from receiving procurement from KEMSA.
Through KEMSA.
That is why they accept these inflated prices. That's what I'm saying.
It's a big game from
It's a game, yes.
beginning to end.
Yes.
Okay, let's play a big game of exporting now. Yesterday we helped you to import
Farm implements.
farm implements
Yes.
into the
Lots of
country.
stuff.
Now you've grown your crop and you want to export avocados. To which country?
America.
China.
To same
You want
market.
to send it back to them now?
But the farm
Who eats
implements,
avocados? America. Who else eats avocados?
Everybody in the world. now.
everybody in the world eats
Become a big
avocados.
thing, eh?
Yes, yes. You see why I mentioned China is because of their population.
It's a huge
Eat the
market.
Avocado well.
They do.
They do.
They do.
They do. So exporting
Japan.
avocados from Kenya to China.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So information that you need to know is available on this portal, kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. Captain Cargo, cargo is KARGO. You go there and you find varied information broken down for ease of consumption. Nduh,
Yes.
just take him through this particular part of exporting.
Okay, since avocado are perishable goods, right? So obviously you know that before you pack and package, you would have found all this information out, all right, CT? So what happens is that the exporter, which in this case is yourself, you would have arranged what they call a book. You would book space with the shipping agent, and you might as well use the same agent that you used when you were importing these goods, right? Because they know the lay of the land.
They worked well for you.
They worked well for you, and
The
the
implements
implements
arrived
arrived, and you even
intact.
harvested avocado, no? Right. So, so what they do essentially in the first step is they issue you with what is called a shipping order. You get that, and so you've basically started the process. The agent will now submit this order and the information of the cargo to KPA and let them know this shipment is intended for, this cargo is intended for shipment. And then after that, remember our C&F, they will lodge an entry, and KRA, who had come in previously, will also now pass this entry. We'll look at more steps as we go along. So now those are the first three things that they would have allowed you, that you would basically do. Inform KPA of your intent to ship. They will now submit this information to KPA, your agent, and then they would also then inform KRA, because now there's some documents that KRA then would need to prepare in terms of payment and duty and whatever you need to pay to get your shipment on the way. And all this information is available on the portal so that you have an idea of what's going on, even as the innards of the system are rumbling and doing their thing.
By the time we finish with this show, we'll have loaded this precious commodity onto a ship on its way to the market. Ka-ching, ka-ching, city. Good morning. It's 11 minutes to 7. At 11 minutes to 7, it's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, we want you to win 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime by calling 0719 012 600 and telling us this story on page 6 of The Standard. The story about Nakuru clerics rejecting the age limit for worshippers quotes a certain bishop who is the founder of Pema Victoria's Churches, and he's been photographed here. His picture appears on this story. What's the name of this bishop? That's all we want you to tell us. 0719 012 600. You've got the next 10 minutes. Ama hiyo pesa napatia Nduh.
I like that.
That's a good idea,
I like
right?
that idea.
Okay. Wajiro, an interesting story that you have.
Right, I'm on The Standard, page 4, and it's a slightly political one today. I'm looking at Mount Kenya bigwigs to support Kemunya after private lunch. And this story tells us that a number of Mount Kenya former and present political leaders paid a lunchtime visit to the new leader of majority of the National Assembly, Amos Kemunya. And the speculation is that the discussion was around President Uhuru's political agenda and how to align to that. The article then goes on to say, of course, the politicians said, no, it was just a private lunch. They didn't even invite the media. But, of course, we all know that the Building Bridges Initiative process will be coming to the House. It's critical that people like him are in the moment and support the agenda. This, of course, comes at a time when the region is politically divided, with a section going the Kieleweke and the Tanga way. So my reflection on this is actually on Amos Kemunya, because obviously we've just seen the purge by the Jubilee administration, and it's interesting to look at the type of people who have come into these positions. And my first recollection of Kemunya when he was previously in public office was that he balanced the budget. The Kibaki administration took over at a time when Kenya was in recession. In fact, the economy, I think, was at -6 or something. It was doing really, really badly. The 90s had ravaged the economy, and in a short 2-3 years, because we were also very heavily indebted by then, he was able to balance the budget. And that was a time of exponential growth in Kenya. We actually moved to +6%.
Who takes credit, Kemunya or Daudi Muraria?
Well, he was the finance minister then, and so you would imagine that he had a big part to play in this. Kemunya eventually then, I think Muraria came after.
Muraria was the first.
No. Muraria was before Kemunya.
Muraria was the first, and then Anglo leasing happened, and so Muraria was out.
And then Kemunya came in. Yes. And
what
Kemunya
happens
balanced.
with
Kemunya, I remember, balanced the budget before you get into the political side, because there was a discussion about the growth of the budget and how he's the one who is on record saying that they moved away from depending on commercial lenders or development partners for supporting the mainstream budget, that their target was to support the budget based on local revenue collections.
Yeah.
I recall that about Kemunya. So the timeline, I'm a bit fuzzy. But then by the same token, he also suffered the same fate as his predecessor, because he had to leave office around the Grand Regency scandal.
Yeah. And
he was also being pursued for a local corruption scandal on his local CDF. And I don't know how that went. So, yeah, it was just... And he was then also a severe Kibaki apologist. So very competent as a finance minister. But
Was he
obviously
really
with this-
competent as a finance minister?
If you look at it in terms of the issues we discussed on Monday, he achieved those parameters.
Did he actually achieve them, or did he simply carry on with what had been begun by his predecessor?
And he didn't bungle it. That's also
He
an
didn't bungle
achievement.
it. That
if you put
matters.
it, if if you state that, then that I'd be willing. But what I would state further, that ministry, had Mirara, it may have had Kimunya, Kibaki ran that ministry.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair
He ran
enough.
it.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
But then
he had direct input in what was
Yes,
happening
he
in the
did.
ministry.
So I am saying that you needed to be extremely stupid to bungle anything in that
But
particular.
that tells
by
you also
same
something.
token,
That also tells you something.
Exactly.
That if Kibaki, the man who's running this ministry and is very personal about what is happening at that ministry, if he appoints somebody there, then he also has high
confidence.
regard and confidence in the person.
and he's a CPAK.
So when he started with his former friend and person that they had worked in the treasury with, Muraria, brought in now Kimunya. From there, was it, who came first? Was it Michuki or Uhuru? One or the other.
Yeah.
It basically just shows you there's something that he was thinking about.
And he's a CPAK with very strong credentials in finance.
Folks,
Yeah,
Doing
folks,
working
yeah.
with,
folks,
you know,
even
so
as
His
so
background,
let-
yes, his
let-
background in finance
when-
is also well rooted.
when we're
even
reviewing-
as we seek to heap accolades on this gentleman,
I think it's a balanced picture.
no.
Uh-huh.
The reality of the way our ministries are run, it's not ministers who run ministries. It is the PSs
PSs.
who run those ministries and the many people below them. Now, what Eric said, and which I believe is what I should focus on, he didn't bungle it. There was a course that was being followed. He ensured that course was followed for the benefit of the country. But anything beyond that, no.
I take a different view. I think ministers should be judged by the performance of their dockets. And this is important because they are the right now they're actually the authority to incur expenditure. That's not always the case. But
They're in
if-
charge of the policy direction of that ministry.
Exactly. And we must hold them. We need points of accountability. So if you exonerate somebody,
I wasn't exonerating them.
or if you
I was
don't hold
merely
them accountable,
stating-
then who do you
I
hold
was,
accountable?
no, I had not brought in the issue of accountability. I was merely talking about functions.
Okay.
Accountability, the flip side is performance. And he did well there. He suffered on his own personal front in terms of integrity, but
If we
give
say
credit where it's due.
that you take, there is no credit I'm giving that gentleman.
What do you see was happening here? I mean, why did they have to have this lunch and bring in the leadership from Mount Kenya?
But-
Some present, some not
But it
present.
isn't unusual.
Starting from the senior people like Kiraitu Murungi coming all the way, the Speaker of the National Assembly coming, the Governor of Laikipia was present, the Governor of Nakuru was present.
But remember, if you talk
CS
about
for
if you talk about the
what are they
governor-
saying?
If
They
you
are
talk
whipping
about
him.
certain governors, these are some of them worked with him in the Kibaki government. Please remember,
The
so they know him fairly well.
Yep.
Yes, but this is not unusual.
I read the stakes
Is
are
it
extremely
succession
high.
politics? Is it like propping him up as
Stakes are high, and they are whipping him.
Peter Kenneth was also there?
In this meeting?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the stakes are high, and
Was-
it's an agenda.
was Koigi
They are
Wamwere there?
strategizing.
Koigi wasn't.
Why?
Neither was Amos Kimemia or Governor Anne Waiguru or Wambora. But the governor of Tharaka-Nithi was there.
And who,
Again, but Eric, such meetings are not unusual.
it's a strategy meeting.
A gathering of politicians, it's not
There's
unusual.
something that it
Oh,
goes
okay,
beyond.
tell us.
I
A
don't
summary
know.
You're
was-
the
it
news
could be
hound.
I was wondering.
You're
It
the
could be
news
anything.
hound.
It
Tell
could
us.
be anything.
What are we
This
missing?
is
some
Beyond strategy.
positioning. Yes, it's beyond strategy. There's an issue of Mount Kenya and Mount Kenya politics and the positioning
BBI and all of that.
and all that.
It could be
What
clear. I mean,
more
you're
could it
coming
be?
up to look. We can't stay away from the fact you're coming up to an election. You're looking at exactly specific or strategic positioning. You never know who is seeking relevance for such positioning. You don't know who is eyeing, particular things.
It's also possible.
And again,
that
it's
the name
not
Kimunya
abnormal.
Is a red herring. They were not here to celebrate or to.
It had nothing to do with him
It had
per
absolutely
se.
nothing to do with him. Maybe it was something else. Still about Mount Kenya.
It's
politics
not
and
abnormal
leadership,
though for them to
but
come
not
together
that they
like
were,
this.
coming together, gravitating around Amos Kimunya.
Ask the
No,
question.
that is-
For the
that is
longest
helpful.
time, it was
people have
perceived that
It was out there.
Kimunya was not in Huru's good books.
Really?
Well, it was even perceived that he was given as much distance as possible. So this is like a rehabilitation.
And maybe he's being told, behave.
Maybe.
We hope he
This
doesn't.
time.
We hope he doesn't.
This time, my brother.
You saw what happened last time.
You saw what
Don't
happened.
do it again.
We
Do
hope
not
he-
allow a Kalole moment. Anyway,
We see the minister.
coming to the
good
top of the
performing
hour,
minister.
just before we go to CT's proverb today, we're going to extend this for about another 5 minutes. So people have been calling and not getting it right. It's on page 6 of the Standard. There's a gentleman who's been photographed there. He's a bishop. He's a founder of the Pema Victorious Churches. What's the name of this bishop? 0719-012-600. A chance for you to win 1,000 shillings worth of Safaricom airtime. CT Muga, today's proverb.
The words of the elders do not lock all the doors. They leave the right door open.
Okay. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
A nasty accident on Outer Ring at Kariobangi North, the overpass there, involving 4 vehicles. So we're being asked to, approach with caution because it's still being sorted out right now. Emergency services and police in the area at the moment, they're trying to sort that out. Remember, so we're looking at the Outer Ring Road at the Kariobangi North underpass. There's a major issue there this morning. Kiambu Road doesn't look so bad, and Ngong Road is actually looking very good. Mombasa Road is picking up, but we don't have any drama there. So far, so good. It's slowing down right around the SGR heading towards Cabanas, but you should be fine thereafter. Looking at Thika Road, also coming along smoothly. We'll see what it has in store for us on this Thursday morning. But like we said, looking around, so far, so good. We'll take a look then into other parts of the country in a short while. Let us know what you see. Don't forget, Spice FMKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep,
Okay, 2 minutes
controversial.
after 7
In the
o'clock,
room, we
are
have
broadcasting on
CT
94.4 in
Muga.
Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9. We are in Kisumu 102.5. In Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, and Malindi 97.7. Remember, we were asking you to give us the name of this bishop, and page 6 of the Standard this morning. We just wanted you to dial star 550 star 2 hash. That's star 550 star 2 hash. With 20 shillings worth of airtime on your phone, you'll be able to get to read the newspaper. So what page is this particular, and I mean, it's on page 6. This particular story is Nakuru clerics reject age limit for worshippers. The story quotes a certain bishop who is the founder of Pema Victorious Churches. The same bishop is also photographed on this page, and we'd like you to tell us the name of this bishop. So let's see if all those people who have been vetted by John and were getting it wrong. Let's see if this one gets it right. Raphael Motembo, good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
How are you? How are you? How are you?
I'm good, I'm good.
Okay. So,
The
Raphael,
answer is, yes,
what's the answer? What's the name of the bishop?
the name of the bishop is Jackson Maina.
Jackson Maina.
Yes, please.
And so he's the bishop and he's the founder of this particular ministry called Pema Victorious Churches.
Yes.
And so where are you calling from, by the way, Jackson? Not Jackson.
I'm calling from Nakuru.
Mm.
And actually the church is along where I live.
Oh, you actually even know the bishop?
Yeah, Yeah, I do. So thank you.
Ah, great. So,
Wait,
Do you have internet?
No, do you belong to that church?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I just park there when I'm carrying on with my errands.
We were speculating whether the church is able to do internet services through YouTube and other things. Is there internet in the area?
Yeah, there is. There's Safaricom and there's Zuku.
Bas.
is there free internet?
I wouldn't tell about that because I don't like for us we use service paid for internet, so I wouldn't know about that.
Okay. Raphael
Yeah.
Motembo, congratulations. You win this 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime.
Okay.
Speak to our producer, John. He'll give you the details of how you get the money.
Oh, thank you.
Enjoy your day. Okay. So, City, you had another interesting story that you wanted to
Well, this one has
bring
been
as a conversation.
Yeah, well, this one has been brewing for some time. It's something that has been happening between Egypt and Ethiopia. Ethiopia have been set on course and have been building a major dam called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD in short. And this dam is supposed to be able to produce up to 45,000 megawatts of electricity. Now, the argument that Ethiopia has put across is that 65 million of his people, out of 114 million, which is their population, do not have electricity. And the demand for electricity keeps increasing by 32% every single year. So there is need for them to provide electricity. And this particular dam, 2/3 of the water that it requires has to come from the Nile. Now, this is now where the issue comes in. Egypt relies on the Nile 100%.
Yep.
And they are arguing that if Ethiopia goes on with its project, 100 million Egyptians will be at risk. 100 million of their population. So this has been going back and forth. The Egyptian took this matter to the UN, the Security Council. The Ethiopian said, no, this precedent is not good. This thing ought to be settled by the AU. Okay? Because if you go to the UN, then it means beyond that, we'll be stuck and hard positions will have been held, and then there will be no room for further discussions.
Yep.
But this debate is still ongoing. Okay? It's still ongoing. The argument, though, however, has also been that if the Ethiopians fill that dam at the pace that they intend to, then the problems that the Egyptians are raising would arise.
Yep.
If they fill it much slower, if they stagger the filling of the dam, then the problem may not occur. So
the negotiation is, all right, if you go ahead, then this is what we expect.
Yes.
We expect to be getting this volume of water on our end continuously as you fill up the dam.
Yes.
But if you just go ahead and do like what people do with dams and, just block off the river and first of all fill up your dam, there's an impact.
You're looking at the entire population of the country.
Yeah.
Because if we're looking at 102 million people that Egypt has, it's the entire country that would be affected. It's the only source of water.
For agriculture.
For agriculture,
and for drinking and for,
In fact, the sensitivities or the restrictions around the Nile affect us because we're also bound by that same
treaty.
Treaty. But, I think the African Union, or is it IGAD, needs to have a word with Ethiopia.
They've been having a word.
Because
with Ethiopia.
We are with Ethiopia.
Because of our Lake Victoria and River Omo.
Yes,
and
because of Lake Turkana. Same thing. It's the same issue. Livelihoods. In fact, I was just looking at the Friends of Lake Turkana who went to court, who've been battling around this because their argument is that the building of those dams then blocks the overflow into Lake Turkana, affecting the levels of Lake Turkana. And as the lake falls, the water's salinity, its temperature increases, threatens the habitat, breeding grounds, source of food.
It actually interferes completely with the ecosystem of that lake, completely.
They also go on to say that the state-sponsored human rights violations, there are state-sponsored human rights violations in line with the cotton plantations in the Omo Basin. So the development that Ethiopia is taking is also not human rights based. So Ethiopia is at a time when the environment and really insecurity around water is at an all-time peak. The actions of Ethiopia not only threaten these countries or these parts of the country.
You do know it isn't
it's
the
a
first
global
dam
issue.
that Ethiopia has actually built using the Nile. There were smaller dams. This one is just a really...
This one is just going to be a gigantic dam,
It
right?
is. It
Gibe
is.
Dam
It is.
on River Omo is a different conversation, which it appears like, Kenya went into some conversations with Ethiopia. They appear to have agreed some things, one or the other. But to what extent are we still going to be affected in terms of the communities around that depend on Lake Turkana?
That has been documented,
That
that
issue-
they will be affected.
That issue and the mitigation for those kind of effects
Not only
still
that,
haven't been addressed.
the purchase of the electricity, because part of the deal that we seem to have made with Ethiopia is that
We'll buy the power.
And experts then say that Kenya doesn't need that power, that actually Kenya has enough power. Our problem
Actually,
is
we have excess. Not even enough.
reticulation.
We actually have excess power.
But these are water wars, because they're saying water is the new gold, and the new wars or conflicts between countries will come around managing water. So maybe Ethiopia is strategically positioning itself to have control of water and become like a regional leader based on their control of these dams.
Well, I mean, if you look at any of the conflicts of the world, if you look at the major conflicts between North-South, within country, international and intra-national, is that you have them surrounded around resources. And one of the major resources has always been water. And because if you
Water
if you
is not-
control...
water is a
because-
very serious
Very
resource.
serious one, because essentially if you control water, you control livelihoods. And people realize this. Apart from needing it, there's the element of control that plays here. And so totally different from the development of a people, it's very clear that people will see that, okay, if I cede control of this resource, I essentially cede power. And nobody wants to be in a position where they are doing that. So it goes beyond just the provision of water, but it goes to the level whereby you see this is something that people are tinkering with so that they can also play with the element of control. And that's why I do agree that regional bodies, if the AU was, doing more than a puppetry role, actually playing its role as a commanding regional body that brings in the interests of its member countries into its conversation and implementation strategy, it would have been able to look at things like this. But again, because of the stance that it has taken, it's very difficult then to negotiate. If it wants to jump in now and play a commanding role, I doubt that we would have many member countries who would look and say, well, all
this
right,
dam has
you've
been
stepped
built,
in and you're
it's
playing
not,
here. That's great.
Also,
It's already done,
I think here the issue is a conversation between the two countries. Yes, you depend, and still we are not blocking off the river. The river is still going to flow, the Nile. It is what's going to happen as you are filling up this dam and as you are operating the
That's
dam.
where the
Yes.
conversation needs to
That
happen.
is where the conversation is seems to be, having a back and forth, and probably just a normal thing. It's a discussion that's going on. There's a push and pull. There's everybody standing from a grandstanding position, and then you start ceding ground as the negotiations happen.
Anybody who listens from the periphery would be able to see and say, well, it makes sense then. Then fill it slowly.
Actually, the Ethiopians
If you look at it,
argue-
and then you would say, fill it slowly. Because if you're looking at the livelihoods of 100 million people going down the drain, it would only make sense that you say, fill this dam slowly. You do it at once, people are going to die, essentially.
See, that dam meets international standards according to Ethiopia.
Yep.
And in addition to that, its outlets and the entire process of how dams work, it also releases water.
Yeah.
So they're actually arguing that they will actually release even more water than the Nile currently has. But you see, you first accumulate the water, then release it. So you are right when you say the real discussion is actually in the filling of the dam.
Of the dam.
Yes.
And even beyond that, also the management of the dam. So, because at some point they can just decide to flood the Nile, from this dam, and it can cause issues.
Even more
downstream.
issues downstream.
Yep.
Look at other countries that then would suffer as a result of that. Kenya, Uganda, looking just down the line. So, I mean,
No, it's
we
the
could
other
look
way.
at it. Oh, right.
This is
okay,
up-
it goes
we're-
up,
we're
it's going, we'll
upstream.
go upstream.
Yes.
But still, if you want to look at other countries that are affected, that's why I talk about the fact that, okay, it could be two countries that are having this conversation. But if you look at the bigger picture, and you could say, well, all right, it's Egypt and Ethiopia, let them sort out their issues. Other people are affected by
You
that.
know, the real issue here is these matters, both these countries have built dams before,
Yep.
but you have to ask, what is the fuss about really? Because by the time you even think, a dam isn't something like a banana which you go to buy in the market. It takes planning, it takes designing, it takes...
mega
it's-
project.
Yes, it takes a long... before it is even commissioned. And I'm sure in all these phases and stages, you consult those who would be concerned.
Yeah.
The noise started even before all this started taking place.
This back and forth is not new. It's not at this
No.
point.
No.
It is. I guess it's those negotiations and the power play between the two
And trying to
countries.
determine and ensure that your interest is actually looked after.
Yep.
Or someone doesn't jump the gun and you end up with something that is actually going to put your country in jeopardy.
What is Egypt's big dam, the Aswan High Dam? Is it not on the Nile?
Yes.
So they also have their own big dam.
Egypt has, I think, 3 dams. Aswan is known to be the biggest, but they have other dams as well. You see, the
On the same-
Ethiopians argue that this dam that they're building is safer than any dam in Egypt or in Sudan. But that's the argument, right?
It brings into mind a very interesting point because, of course, we are campaigning strongly for public participation in Kenya, for instance. Ethiopia may or may not have that. But there's a need for, when you're building this kind of dam that has regional impacts, they still need human rights-based approach to development, puts people at the center, and you therefore premise public participation. And in just 1992, the African Charter said that development is by the people, and the people must be consulted. And so, like Nduh is saying, if the AU was not so sleepy, if this charter had actually been operationalized, the point that Siti is making about those affected should have been part of the conversation, so that these challenges are assuaged early on. Yeah. Another point is that we have a similar situation with these dams when it comes to the Tana River, Kengen, and Garissa, and similar back and forth, where Kengen county government says they don't even tell us when they're releasing the water, so that we can prepare ourselves, or they will tell us, without enough
Notice.
Notice for
Yeah.
for them to react.
Yeah.
17 minutes after 7. Take a quick break. Take a look at the weather. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
All right, look at Nairobi, and the sun is peeking out in some areas. We'll see that partly cloudy conditions will continue for most parts of the day with highs of 23. And in Njeri this morning, it's mostly cloudy. We'll see highs of 22 and lows of 14. Taking a look then into Nakuru, where it's partly cloudy through most of the day today. We'll see highs of 23 and lows of 12. In Eldoret, it's promised to be a wet afternoon, highs of 21 and lows of 11. And in Kisumu, highs of 28 and and lows of 18. Mostly cloudy conditions throughout the day. Kakamega will have rain showers in the afternoon with highs of 25 and lows of 15. Looking into Mombasa, where the light rain showers are already coming down at 25 degrees, it'll graduate to thunderstorms later with highs of 28 and lows of 24. Taking a look then into Malindi, cloudy conditions and light rain showers already beginning. Rain is touted to continue for the rest of the day, highs of 28 and lows of 24. We'll take a look into Kampala now, where it's partly cloudy at 18 degrees. It was forecasted to be a wet afternoon as well, highs of 26 and lows of 18. 23 degrees in Dar es Salaam and mostly cloudy. Thunderstorms are forecasted for later with highs of 28 and lows of 22. Johannesburg at 8 degrees is cloudy, highs of 16 and lows of 6. And wrap things up in Lagos for now, partly cloudy conditions at 24 degrees. Rain showers expected soon, highs of 28 and lows of 23.
Okay,
Classic
so
soul.
let's have a conversation around education. Two headlines in two of the big dailies this morning touching on this particular matter. The standard headline is, "Why Teachers Are Lucky. Tutors employed by the government to continue enjoying their salaries for no work, at least for now, even as those in private schools resort to ingenuity and odd jobs to ride out the virus." And the Standard has given this stories, page 6, page 8, and page 10, issues around teachers, those in the public service and those in private sector, who, those in public service, of course, are going to still continue enjoying a salary. In what the Standard is saying, the TSC teachers are going to get their salaries despite being idle. And then it also tells us the story of the teachers in private sector who are asking for any kind of odd job just to make ends meet. Same, addressing the same need, the same people, the same sector, but different categories. The Nation headline is a bit different, right, CT? Because it's talking about what you were discussing yesterday a bit. The issue of school fees. Those that had paid school fees, and now you've told them the school is not going to reopen until early next year. What happens to the fees? The Education CS came out and said you need to refund the school fees.
Yeah.
Fat chance.
Fat chance. Another headline on the Standard, huge losses as food stock wasted in schools closure. So BOMs, he's a chairman of a school, Bwana Mwenyekiti, Bwana Chairman and other school heads have basically a headache because they had bought food stock to last them long, and then schools were closed even before the end of the first term. They have food in their stores, and they need authority from the government to sell off the stock. To offload.
Oh, they need authority.
Yeah.
Yes.
Government hasn't given the directive?
The government was not clear on what was going to happen.
Oh, dear.
So now what happens? Do they sell off the stock? Do they
Oh, dear.
keep it longer? What's going to happen to it?
People must be hungry in those areas. You know, this is a no-brainer. That is
Yes.
not wasted food. That is a stock.
Yes, it isn't
to
wasted.
cushion
But
the
who is going
community.
to give you? See, when the
Who's
government
buying?
when the government gives you money for certain activities, you think they're going to replenish that money if you sort of like
Donate it.
The government doesn't work like that.
How does government work?
The government allocates
Outside of
money
logic.
for schools per term.
Yep.
Or it's per year, but in a term you get this. You also don't get it on time, but you get it. If it's for books, it is this. Once they give it to you, they're looking to the next year. That year,
They're done.
Dusted.
And let's also remember that just 2 weeks ago, PS Bello Kipsang asked schools the money that had been allocated to them for the second term, for first term, for certain things, needed to be refunded to the ministry, to all schools, because obviously you were not using it. So we see, number one, if money was sent to you, you're going to be asked to return it as schools. And then now they're dealing with this issue of, supplies in the stores.
Yep.
And what are they supposed to do with them, because now schools are not going to open. So they've put themselves, it has put them in a very difficult situation. It's just off the bat. Funds that were sent to you, obviously you did not use them, send them back. And then now you've also gone ahead and bought. What do you do?
Can I get a quote from Dr. Wandi Njoya? Kenyan education kills our ability to deal with reality. We become hardline and brittle. But being brittle, instead of elastic, means that reality will break us. And of course, she wrote this thinking about the students. But when I think about the way the ministry is dealing with COVID, this is what you see: rigidity and inability to respond proactively to the obvious. The food stocks, for instance, should not be wasted. Food is needed. They should be redeployed. A second point, apart from this very rigid mindset, I would say is government works in silos. And one of the big impediments in governments across the world, and in Kenya particularly, is this silo mentality, where Ministry of Education is here, health is there, social services are there, and they're not sitting together with also other stakeholders who can enrich their thinking to say, this problem is also a resource.
And I think that's where the bigger problem is in terms of left hand, right hand, left leg, right leg, not knowing exactly what each is doing, and yet you're all moving and you're basically helping this huge body to move. You don't know. So the entire bureaucratic system that is government is what is causing all these things. When you see a headmaster, for example, the principal of Maseno University, who's been quoted here saying he has a population of 2,200 students. So he had bought food. He had bought food to be able to feed a population of 2,200 teenagers, boys. Can imagine the amount of food he had bought. Now he has all this food in the store, but he cannot offload it because he requires authority to do that. I am sure it's a conversation that he's already raised with the people just above him. The people above him may have raised it to the people above them. But before a decision is arrived at, and then that is communicated all the way back down, it takes forever. If we went to Education Ministry, you may find that there are people who are already having these conversations. But now, who is going to make the decision?
And people are going hungry.
Yep. Who's going to make the decision? And then what happens? There's a whole impact of, so we gave you money, you went and bought food. You also took school fees from parents. You went and bought food. What are we talking about?
It isn't the function of the Ministry of Education to feed the population of the village around the school.
Their focus is school.
School, period.
Right, but this is government. There is a food reserve to cushion households in the county because every school is in a county.
Yep.
So with just some good interconnection, this food should be made available to the community and then the details be worked out. With regard to the refund...
The government doesn't work like that.
With regard to the refund, I do not support the idea of a refund for this reason.
Refund for school fees.
Yeah, well, maybe, okay, parents, that should be maybe carried over or whatever. The children are still continuing. Refund to the ministry, no. Because, like I was saying yesterday, I think the ministry, apart from the reality that children cannot go to school, should have taken measures to ensure that learning continues. And that money could be redeployed in terms of preparing schools for the school of the education of the future. I did a bit of research. What I found, and I'm not an expert, these are just ideas. Kenya at present has a shortage of 100,000 teachers. We spend 21.1% of our budget, this was in 2019, of our budget on education. In other words, we're already spending a lot on education. We can't afford to spend more. So I put it to you that our model is actually not sustainable. We are not able to deliver quality in the present way we are giving education. So going digital and looking for alternative ways of learning is an imperative if our education standards are to survive. Then added to that is learning has changed. The present model we have is a lot of information regurgitation. And even the competency-based curriculum is trying to move away from that banking. There is more discussion about with the internet now, you have access to a lot of information. You need to teach children how to use information, how to become critical thinkers. So in line with this, the model is broken. The idea that children only learn in these organized spaces is not sustainable. E-learning becomes an imperative. And that is where these additional resources would have been going to look for. How do we then keep kids learning at a basic level, but also prepare ourselves for the paradigm shift, because there's a paradigm shift in the way we conduct business.
I hear like as if you're saying that e-learning will come and substitute physical learning.
I think it will complement. And
so we still need to go to school,
of course,
and then use e-learning as a tool.
Yes.
To support whatever is happening in school.
If we have a shortage of 100,000 teachers, now that's a lot, because you're saying the teacher-student ratio in public schools is way too high, that those kids cannot hope to get quality education, cannot compete with their counterparts in private education. 100,000, when the ministry is already gobbling up 21.1% of government of the budget. Health is at 7%. Health should be at 15%. Agriculture is at 4%. Agriculture should be at 10%. We don't have much more room to put money into health, into education. Private education is not accessible to to all students. It creates a lot of inequity. So I think we have a problem and an opportunity. A problem because we are not able to give quality education to all children. The opportunity is COVID has taught us we need to rethink, and technology is there, and how do we mix it up? So I think we needed a better solution, and the minister and his advisors needed to get outside the box. I also think, though, that there are interests around our present model.
Allow me to interrupt you here. There are thinkers within that ministry. The Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development has many thinkers. What you're discussing is not what is done at the level of thinking, it's at the level of implementing. The truth of the matter is that even the best well-laid plans will get politicized. That's where things now start going left and right and left and right and left and right.
This conversation continues. At 7:30, it's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's look at what's happening on the roads and come back and look at what options and alternatives does the Ministry of Education have? Could it have implemented at this point? Good morning.
It may have changed. Traffic still remains, more or less manageable this morning, except for the accident that we see right around the underpass at Kariobangi North there. So we need to be very careful when approaching the area. It's going to affect traffic. It already has started to do that. So we see quite some there. Coming off Thika Road, it's busy, but not too terrible around Muthaiga, then getting into the CBD. Mombasa Road, very clear today, so enjoy that before it becomes something else. Avoid the express lane. Like we said, Outer Ring Road, there was an accident there. And now there's another one on the same road as we've been able to see. So please, guys, be very, very careful this morning. Spice FMKE, let us know what you see. You get stuck somewhere, let us know. We might be able to provide you with an alternative. And at the same time, let others know.
So as we look at the possible and possibilities, let's start from the knowns, going to the unknowns and to the possibilities. What happened after the government announced closure of schools? Students were told to go home, but then they were told you'll be able to access material that helps you to continue learning although it is not the syllabus. You're not continuing the syllabus as we wait for announcement on what's going to happen, when you're going to reopen. And that's when KICD rolled out what it already has, and it was already continuing to do. And this is the radio and TV programs. So partnered with a wider number of organizations, KTN News is among them, and they decided to provide a platform where students can access this. Now, the question that emerges is the access to a popular, a large majority of the students. How many have access to radio? How many have access to TV? And that became another conversation. What are the opportunities? Universities were put on the spot, and they were told, all right, so we are seeing international schools in the country that are based here continuing to offer learning through internet because most of them are urban-based. Universities that are urban-based, is it possible for you to do the same, to offer online learning? And we spoke to a lecturer here who called and said, look, we are trying to think about how to do this the same. I call one of my students and tell him to organize a group. And my student tells me, I'm in Kajiado, I don't have access to internet. I will not be able to join this conversation on WhatsApp group. So I cannot even go into Zoom or WebEx and have the learning happening. There are some, however, that have continued to do the same. Professor X and Iraqi was telling us that he's teaching some of his classes through these platforms, WebEx and the rest. But you see, as a university coming and saying the University of Nairobi, we are continuing all our programs on this platform, did not happen. Same issue. People have come from all corners of the country. What's their access to internet? So we have the infrastructural challenges that came in, but there was the whole policy and the will to roll out the information and continuation of learning on digital platforms and other platforms. Now, what options would you say that the government would have used or implemented to ensure better and continuous learning for the rest of the year?
I think, Eric, you said it yourself some weeks ago, and I think you said it yesterday as well, that the universities really have no excuse. At that level, they should, and I think they do resume in September, and I imagine they will be going into some sort of remote learning as well, because they still have to distance and everything. And I think there's a point you made that I remember. The universities have been investing heavily in setting up brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar, yes.
Which shows they didn't read the times. And I think the recognition has to be that we are on a paradigm shift. Things will never be the same again. We will never learn in the same way again. And in fact, there are people who question what is education? What's the value of going to learn all these historical facts? Everything's on the internet right now. So you end up in... what is this paradigm shift is what we should be addressing. So I think universities need to get there, and the big challenge is the other levels. And the last point I'll make, just to add, the question you're asking, when I was doing some research, I found that there have been some institutions in the ICT sector that have been talking up internet access and putting it at around 90%, and arguing that if you look at secondary users, like you say, okay, this household doesn't have, but they have a cousin who lives there or whatever, 90% access. But the Bureau of Statistics puts it at 1 out of every 5 Kenyans between over the age of 3 has access. So that's not very high. 1 out of 5 isn't very high. It means more households than 1 in 5 will have, because if it's 1 in 5 and they're spread out, maybe more households have access.
Where did they conduct this research of theirs?
Well, this is the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics.
Yes,
so they're saying it's quite low. It's at 1 in 5.
I'm still questioning
20%.
20%.
I'm still questioning it.
Yeah.
Why I'm questioning it is, you see, when you give such statistics, it's important to state, to differentiate it. Meaning, you'll say that in the urban areas or in some of the what we call the bigger towns, this is what we find. Then it makes it easier. That's cumulative.
I'm sure they did,
Yeah.
but this
It's
is
all
like
right.
from
Carry
a
on.
standard news report.
Carry
They
on.
say that in terms of mobile phone subscriptions are at 53 million, not a surprise. Mobile ownership is highest in rural areas at 12 million, urban areas 8 million, which is interesting.
It just means there are more people in the rural
In the-
areas
yeah.
Okay,
than the urban.
yeah.
The
true.
population skew is in rural areas.
Is in rural areas. Functional TV set is 40.7% of households. And then urban is 63.5% and 26.9% in rural areas. So it is low, which is the gap that government should be seeking to
Yeah.
bridge. If you remember...
It's a conversation that should be happening. And there's already infrastructure to have these conversations. We have a Kenya ICT authority, and that's its job, to look at penetration of ICT and ICT services, managing the fiber network. It's called what the NOFB, the fiber network spread and distribution across the country, and ensuring that every major town of the Republic has connectivity to the fiber optic. Got to some point, it started slowing down. It was initially heavily funded under the Kibaki administration, and then it sort of slowed down. But you see, we have all these things, and I see what you're saying, Wanjiru, in that during this time, the conversation we could have heard from the ministry saying, okay, for now, we'll not be able to go back to school. However, even when we go back, this is what we have been able to see, and these are the opportunities. And this is what we're going to utilize the next 9 months doing to ensure that we are never in such a situation again in the future.
What if this bug stays in the air?
What if the bubonic plague erupts next year?
The thing is that there will always be something, and I think if we were looking at trends in which, look, whether it was, forget about even the world, look at the trends that were taking place in the country. We are right now in the information and communication age. This is where we are at the moment, and that means that whatever it is that we do, whatever areas or spheres within which we operate, that element has to be taken into consideration. The digital skew has to come in. It'll come in whatever sector we choose to look at it. It'll come in education. It'll come in health. It'll come in infrastructure. It'll come in, planning, urban, rural planning, whatever it is that we choose to look at. So the thinking has to start, because it all starts from the thinking. It has to start to go in those general directions. Because like you said, if it stays around for long, if it disappears tomorrow, we don't know. But the truth of the truth of the matter is that something else will come. We can, at least of that we can be sure. That something else will come that will still force us to change our way of life. Now, in the way in which learners, students are being educated, the world started to take a different change a very long time ago. Just a few days ago, we talked about how we consume news and information has changed. In some countries, the newspaper is obsolete. What changes did they make? We have to also start to think the way in which we teach children has to change. So even when this thing came about, even when this corona came about, unfortunately, for a lot of things, it caught even the education sector flat-footed. And I'm saying that we should not be in that situation where we are caught flat-footed. We should start thinking about a several option-oriented approach to doing things.
Yeah.
So that if I can't be physically with my students in class, what else can we do so that the process of learning would not be interrupted?
So how do we ensure this gets done?
Oh, this is what I'm saying now.
Who's going to bail the cat?
Well, there
I
you go.
think for a start, we
We're going so well, CT.
For a start,
Let's first of all do the nice part.
no,
But I agree with what Nduh is saying,
Yeah.
but how do you get it done?
Before you get to that point,
For a
can we
start-
first of all now just be nice?
for a start, we should not accept, and we shouldn't accept that millions of children, like that the education year has been written off. We should, that should be very expensive for government to say.
Yeah.
And more so because we know private children are learning. And, for me, in my mind, if I think the decision makers, unfortunately, not enough decision makers have children who are at home.
That may not
so
be
there's a very-
entirely true.
So
Wanjiru.
the point I was making is that why are we so comfortable saying children are at home? But the reality
we are not
is it's
comfortable.
not all children are at home. The children who are at home are the children who are in the public system. So we should demand that
No, all children are at home.
not learning.
Wanjiru.
Yeah.
Not learning.
Yes.
So we should demand that when the ministry makes its statement,
Yeah.
it's giving us a way forward. We are saying, okay, children are at home, they are not learning.
I agree.
We
I
are
agree.
so unhappy, but show us the way forward.
We
so
are
that
talking about at least 50% of the population of the Republic of Kenya not getting a service that they ought to be getting right now.
Basic
All
human right.
This is a service that they ought to be getting. If we just look at the statistics that tell us that of 2/3 of the Kenya country's population is below 35, then you also now look at how many are below 18, so should be getting basic education. How many are within that age bracket of 18 to 25 who should be getting college and tertiary education? All of those are at home. They're not accessing this education. And this is what they do on a daily basis. So what are you telling them? That you're telling an entire country, more than half the population of an entire country
Chill out.
has just chilled out and done nothing
in fact,
for a full year.
a UNICEF,
And we take that and we say, oh yeah, okay, it's because of COVID.
Till
No,
January.
I agree.
UNICEF
No.
was saying that the problem with this is that, the full school feeding program is disrupted, number one, so there's livelihoods issues.
Yeah.
But then also they were saying that the rate of attrition increases with the number of months or the duration that students are out of school. So we might have a problem to see kids restarting back into the system.
Yeah.
So we must, no, it's not enough.
So this
is
must,
not.
Wanjiru, how do we go about making this must a reality? Because that's what we need to do, but how do we make it a reality?
Well, we need to pressure the ministry for one to...
I'm going to ask,
to
how do you
think-
pressurize the ministry?
Yeah, okay. Well, we have some government officers who are coming to join us. We can ask them. We can ask them. And then we
the
can
reason
use
I'm asking you these
parents,
questions
school
is this:
owners.
It's not
petitions.
that within the Ministry of Education, they do not have even answers to what we're asking. Don't lose focus of where our problem actually lies. It's when you come to implementation, and at that point it gets politicized. This issue of distant learning, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development had this thing figured out a long time ago. Not at before COVID,
The radio
ago.
classrooms of the 70s and 80s, I mean, that's a long time ago. And they're already thinking, so what do you have? And that,
They
those
have
days, they only
figured
had
out
access
these
to one
things.
radio, KBC.
Yes, even this issue of ICT, they've got it figured out. But if there's no funding, if there's no support, if it's politicized,
In fact, you're
If there's
putting
no
it...
price to pay
yes,
for the
those-
political class,
yes,
they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
And this is why I see what Wanjiru is saying. We need to pile the pressure just beyond this, but by having conversations that say, no, we do not accept this. No, you have more answers to give us. What is it that you're going to do to ensure that this doesn't happen again? Or what have you been doing in the last 8-9 months?
It cannot
Have
be.
you just been observing and seeing,
Well,
this
okay.
it's a health emergency, yeah?
It cannot be that there's only a one track mind when it comes to solving problems. It can't be that you only have one option. That if we're not able to do it this way, then the only other way is to stop everything completely. And I'm saying there's got to be some give. So maybe we didn't take into consideration at the time when we were talking about, all right, no, we can't have children go to school at the time when a pandemic is going on, looking at the health aspect. But then to also take that thinking a little further and say, all right, so they can't be in school physically. However, learning must continue. What is it that we are going to do to make sure that it doesn't stop?
Yeah.
Now, the responsibility, yes, does lie in the hands of those who've been given the job. I refuse to believe, just like CT is saying, I refuse to believe that those who come up with these policies didn't have an option for digital learning or outside
They had those
classroom
options.
or
They've had them for a
outside
long
classroom
time.
learning. It has been there. So yes, I think the push needs to come from having these
Maybe you're also
conversations.
giving them a bit of too much credit.
No.
No, I
I'm
don't-
actually
I
not
think-
giving
I
them enough
believe- I
credit.
believe there
I refuse
should
to
be.
be. I
I
refuse
believe
to
those
believe
plans
that
will
they.
be
Sa-
there.
I refuse
They
to
may
believe that
have
they
thought
sat
about
there
it, but they
and
haven't
said
put
the
an
only
end-to-end
option.
solution to it.
I'm sure
I
they
But
have
their job-
their
idea
plans.
here,
But
idea
their job
there.
is to
Government
create.
has very
Their job is
competent
to
people. It's the
develop.
political leadership.
Their
that
job is
fails
to
them.
develop. Their job
Yes.
is to
Which is a
develop.
very good excuse that the public service gives, by the way, all the
person
time.
who takes it, the arm that takes it then from development to actual implementation, it doesn't rest with them.
It's not them.
It's not them.
It's
If
like
that
saying
plan
the Kenya National
existed,
Examination Council is like telling them, why aren't you writing the curriculum? That's not their job.
It's not their job. It's
Yes.
it's somebody else's job
Yes.
to write the curriculum. I'm saying that, let's give credit that there are very brainy people, very many people who think and think broadly and who are experts in education who are domiciled in these departments. The Ministry of Education, the KICD, the Kenya National Examination Council, and others. However, I am holding back on giving them the absolute credit that they have a solution. It's only that solution has not been accepted by the
Who-
political class.
Eric,
I am
you have
thinking that
information
they
to
may
the
have
contrary.
they may have ideas. They haven't shown us any information that they have. They may have ideas, but in terms of thinking an end to end, that in the event this happens, there's a solution. There's already a program in place. In the event we have a pandemic and people have to be out for an entire term, this is what's going to be rolled out, and this is what is required. If that was there, we'd be hearing about it.
No, I
KICD rolled out what they had in plan. They had the plans that they had in place came out because they already had a plan.
Eric, the reason why I don't agree with you, and it's going back to what CT was saying earlier when we were talking about the dams, about Amos Kimunya as minister and what his role was. I think the capacity is there, competent people are there, the ideas are there, but the political decisions are taken by the minister, and in fact, the political direction comes from the president. It is top, and this is why we were saying that we had an ICT revolution in Kenya. Did we not? Under the Kibaki administration. We actually forget we didn't have internet access until under Bitange Ndemo
And Mutahi Kagwe.
and Mutahi Kagwe. Kenya opened up and changed, and we even forgot what it used to be like. But why did that process stop? Because when the Jubilee administration came in, they are the tech, digital, very savvy presidents, but they
presidents.
talking. They did not prioritize, and prioritize is nothing other than you put money and you give the direction to your minister. So number one, the first port of call is the president, and the practical instrument is the budget. And what we'd like to see, because we were told by Abraham Rugo there is going to be a supplementary budget, the supplementary budget should address these gaps. That is what has to happen. Otherwise, we can't say we are waiting for kids. The other
To open school in January next year. 10 minutes
Think-
to 8. Let's take a quick break. 10 minutes to 8. It's a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We are discussing education. And what is it that the government has been doing since schools closed on the 15th of March? Children have been at home. And now they've been told, stay at home until January next year. For colleges and universities, you will resume in September. Let's see how that happens. Let's remember that we are helping CT to export some stuff to China. And this is a shipment of avocado to China. So we did the first 3 steps in terms of looking at the KPA portal, which is the Captain Cargo, KARGO, and it gives you information on what you need to know about the process of exporting through the port. So we are taking the goods to Mombasa. Nduh told you the first 3 steps, which is first you arrange to book a space with a shipping agent, and you're issued a shipping order. Then the second thing, the shipping agent submits your export cargo information to the Kenya Ports Authority. The next thing is that the clearing and forwarding agent lodges the entry, and Revenue Authority passes entry. Next steps.
Right. So the Kenya Revenue Authority then passes the entry and issues a release. So the entry has been passed, and obviously there's certain, tariffs and then rates that you must then pay. After that is done, they issue you a release. So now you have a release to ship, essentially is what you have. And then the CNF submits this. So it's what they call a pre-advice. So the pre-advice then is sent to KPA, and they then pay the port charges. So the certain port charges then that will be sent to you. This is what is actually going to be the cost, depending on the weight, the number. All of this information has already been pre-entered, right? So you have a truck, whichever one you like, CT, and this one now. Yeah, that one. The export cargo then arrives at the entry gate and is issued with a position slip. Same kind of slip that you got when it was leaving in the first place with all your goods. So now all of this paperwork has taken place between the relevant authorities. The payment has been done. You're issued with a slip. Then your truck arrives at the entry gate. You get your position slip. So now what we are waiting for is to get through all the checks so that your precious cargo can then be loaded. And we'll look at those when we come back.
All right. Six minutes to 8 o'clock. We are still discussing the education, and there's a question that you're asking. So, how do we pass our rejection of what the government is doing? How do you communicate this, and how do you ensure that something happens? What options do we have?
Well, I think the first thing is the like I said just before we broke is the budget. Yeah, and you've moved on a positive note. I wanted to be very negative and say, my criticism of the minister is the lack of imagination. If you're saying there are teachers who are on payroll, as they should be, but they're idle, these are idle assets. These assets should be working towards a new way.
Why are they idle in the first place?
They should be working towards, the new way of delivering education and also supporting education. So my take is the ministry has not thought enough through this. And the second is that this needs to be prioritized and pressure put on government to we must not accept that children will stay home. I think my last point is it's very painful when you become unemployed and idle in the house. I think equally for kids. There's this assumption that they're just children, let them stay home. But what you'll see is teen pregnancies going up. Like UNICEF was saying, you'll see children not being able to get back into the system, more increased attritions. So we need to get angry. We need to say no. We need to raise the bar and just say, sorry, Mr. Minister.
It's not enough.
Not enough.
It's not enough.
Not
we can't just
acceptable.
say that half the country's population loses a year. That's it.
He's a paper pusher. His job is to get children
Because
here,
they are
push them
children,
there,
therefore they
money
have
here.
lost a year. No, it's half the country's population that has lost a year. What has the government done to address that?
Actually,
to serve them?
it may be even more than half.
Obviously, it's more than half.
Because if you're talking about the public schools, I don't think there's been very much learning taking place.
There's no learning that's
It's in
taking
the
place.
private schools where learning has been taking place, whether they are learning private schools
And
that
a few,
have
private schools,
few urban,
private schools.
yes.
Because many of them, we also know that many of the teachers who work in private schools have lost their jobs. They're now looking for anything else that they can do. I'm a teacher, but what else can I do? Where can you employ me? So there are many people. If we actually look at the number of students that go from kindergarten all the way to Form 4, and then beyond that, from Form 4 to colleges, all the TVETs and universities, this is a huge chunk of our population. Not just the students, you're also talking about their teachers. Their teachers are also not being utilized. Half the population of the Republic of Kenya is losing a year. And all we do is say, they've lost a year, we shall begin next year and accept. No, I agree, maybe not.
There was also the general thinking that many parents were happy to keep their children at home for the next 6 months because that meant then the responsibility or the burden of having to look for school fees was then removed from them. But I dare say, even from what we've seen, just the rumblings in the recent weeks, parents don't actually know what to do with their children at home. There are parents now who are saying that, you know what, look, we have to work, whereby when we were in a limbo, and we really didn't know what was going on or what the outcome would be, then it was all right to, you know, tinker with the idea of being home and playing a little bit. But then, you know, push comes to shove, and there's got to be one way or another where these children are kept, occupied. So there are parents who are taking the initiative to have some kind of studies done for their kids, whether it's private tuition or whatever, however else you want to keep them engaged with literacy. But that's then done on your own. It's your own volition. Unfortunately, even as we look at solutions for this, it is clear in my mind that these are things, and yes, with all merit, that are going to take time to implement. They're going to take time. It's not something that a ministry will say, all right, I've heard the agitation. I've understood what it is that you're saying. From tomorrow, this and this will be put in place. It's not going to happen in a week. It's not going to happen in a day. It is going to take time. I dare say that it'll take the 6 months that we're saying these kids are going to be at home for them to implement something like this, whereby you say digital learning is going to take place.
That is 6 months with the status quo. What if we have a surge in infections?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see,
Even
to even
next year,
compound the issue more.
And remember, the issue is actually compounded because the diseases that were there before COVID didn't go anywhere.
Yep.
Right.
Malaria didn't
People
go
are
anywhere.
still dying.
HIV didn't go anywhere. All these things didn't go anywhere.
Everything
but with the
else is still
condition
there.
that we have and the absence of money, Eric, continue.
Coming to the top of the hour. So you continue.
I think my last point was going to be we have idle assets by way of teachers. We have parents who are struggling. They, if you think of low-income parents who count on that meal for kids, we need creativity from the ministry, proactivity.
Indeed. Today's proverb?
The words of the elders do not lock all the doors. They leave the right door open.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Juja Road today, there's overlapping going on. There was traffic before that all began, and the road looks like a one-way street, and it actually is not. So that's an absolute mess in both directions. Use the service lanes on Thika Road today. They're not so bad, whereas the main highway, unfortunately, is, and traffic is bumper to bumper. All right, let's look at Westlands. Coming to the Westlands roundabout, all the way up there from Udhiru, passing the 87. The Red Hill bypass can be used, but traffic is moving very slowly then as you approach Westlands. On Mombasa Road, it's behaving in fine form today, not so bad. Getting all your way to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout will not be too much of a headache today. So traffic doesn't seem too bad today, except for the odd accident here or there, which has already been sorted out, and not too much in terms of injuries. Okay, let us know what you see. We're in the middle of traffic hour, but we don't see much drama today. Remember, Spice FMKE, that's how you can get in touch with us. Let us know where you might be stuck, and we'll share that information.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, Controversial.
8 o'clock.
In the room,
This
we
is Kenya's
have
biggest
C.T.
conversation, broadcasting from Nairobi,
Muga, researcher,
94.4.
academic,
In Mombasa,
seasoned
87.9.
political observer, a
102.5
fountain of
Kisumu,
wisdom in these
96.4
politically
Nakuru,
uncertain
Eldoret,
times.
96.7,
Nduh
Njeri,
Okoh,
90.9,
Nigerian by
Malindi,
birth,
97.7,
Kenyan by choice,
and live streaming to the
communications
world
expert,
on
Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and
and
believer
also
in
on
people
YouTube,
power,
Spice FM KE, on
and
Facebook and
Eric
Twitter,
Latiff,
Spice FM
agent
KE.
provocateur,
And
the man in the chair,
next hour,
seasoned
let's
journalist,
talk to
news
the
hound,
governor
a
of
man who
Makueni
believes in
County.
punching up,
Professor Kivuda
not
Kibwana.
down.
For those who
This
know
is the
Professor Kivuda Kibwana
Situation
just
Room,
from Makueni
the
County.
only way
And
to...
you also need to know that Professor Kivuda Kibwana has served in Parliament. He has been a member of Parliament for Makueni between 2002 and 2007. He has served in the cabinet. He was a minister for lands and settlements and also minister for environment and natural resources. He then, in the second term of the Kibaki presidency, served as the president's advisor on constitutional and parliamentary and youth affairs. Remember, this is the period when we now got the new constitution in the second term of the Kibaki presidency. You can imagine the president's advisor on constitutional parliamentary affairs was very, very involved in the conversation around the new constitution. But before that, even for the past 2 decades, the previous 2 decades before that, Professor Kivuda Kibwana was really involved in pushing for a new constitution, in the conversations for what the new constitution should look like. He was the convener and the founder of what was called the NCEC, that is the National Convention Executive Council. He was a spokesperson. He had come up with an organization called the Center for Law and Research International. This is a man who has worked in public service, worked for the public for many years. So by the time we were deciding, let me go and serve as the governor of Makueni County, he was going to implement some of the ideas that he had, some of the issues that he thought a government should do for its people, and that is what he exactly went to do. Professor Kivuda Kibwana, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning to you,
Good
Professor.
morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Yeah, that is a big team, a war team.
Yes, it's a whole team. It's a whole room.
Yes.
So, Professor, we'll get straight into, discussing the issues of, I've just given a brief background of who you are, what you've done in terms of serving the public. Even before that, you've taught law, you're a professor of law, you've taught law, you have been the dean at the University of Nairobi in the Faculty of Law. You've done very many things, but there are many people who just see you as the Professor Kivuda Kibwana, Governor, Makueni County. Just give us a brief, 2 minutes of your public service life.
Well, I think, first of all, I want to thank you for calling me to Spice, and I know that Spice is a very influential station in terms of influencing ideas in our country. I can say that all my life has been in public service, because after my studies at 23, I began to teach in a public university, the University of Nairobi. And I didn't want to practice law in the usual way in the private sector. I thought that I could use law for purposes of helping my country, our society. And that is why a big chunk of my earlier life was about agitating for the return of multipartyism, agitating for a new constitution, because the independence constitution had been reviewed too much. And then I taught for 25 years in the University of Nairobi, and also leading in terms of during those tumultuous days when students, there was a lot of unrest, and I tried to work with young people to in the NGO sector as well to protect them, because those days when they were demonstrating, they got hurt a lot. Some of my friends got killed. So subsequently, in terms of now working within government, I did that. It was not always easy, but we enjoyed serving under Kibaki, because he was somebody wanting to reform the country's economy to get our country back on track. And then, of course, currently working in Makueni, it's a pleasure, because you are working with people, you are in a space where you can co-create development matters with them, lay a foundation for the state. So really, I have been public life because I never quite got into the private sector in terms of practicing as a lawyer as such.
Now, you are serving as governor of Makueni, and we are currently fighting a global pandemic, and it's a health emergency. Makueni has been touted as one of those that are miles ahead of other counties in terms of rolling out healthcare and improving the healthcare infrastructure. Now, as we look at the reopening and the easing of the restrictions, and people now leaving Nairobi and leaving Mombasa and coming home to Shags, they'll be getting into Makueni. Counties are being advised that now be prepared to take up some of the load that was being handled in Nairobi and Mombasa. How prepared is Makueni?
I think we have tried our best. It's not easy because we have almost 250 kilometers of the Nairobi-Mombasa highway. In Kenya, I think that's the longest stretch. And because of the truck driving and all that, we are challenged on a daily basis by the pandemic. But initially, we got our medical staff trained because this is a new thing. So you have to get them through the protocols of dealing with a new disease. That we did. Unfortunately, we had the staff who had worked in DRC during Ebola. So he was very instrumental toward helping the others. Mm-hmm. And we did something else, which is a bit special, because in Makueni we have what one could call a citizens' government, because they elect themselves from villages. We have 43 villages, and they are there for those development leaders. And we were able to train about 50,000 people, both development committee people as well as community health workers, so that they can go into each household. They can tell them about the do's and don'ts of COVID-19. They can see who doesn't have livelihood. They can see the ones who are unwell, like diabetes, those diseases that make people more prone to COVID. So we have that movement, and each one of those people is in charge of 5 of our 250,000 households, so that they can help us. We, as Minister Mutahi Kagwe came to see yesterday, we have also a unit of treating at water headquarters, and we have a unit that we are working with KMTC in Makindu, and already we have over 300 beds now for treating people. We actually manufacture oxygen in Makueni, so we have that in supply. And finally, we are going into now the schools, because we are thinking that particularly people will be quarantined and so on, will be many. So we are going into also schools so that we have space there, since they won't open soon. And we are focusing more now on home-based care for those who are not seriously unwell, because we think the numbers will surge. And one still must say, with all the difficulties, the Minister of Health and the President are trying their very level best, because I will not deny them credit. They are trying their very best, and it's just the money to flow to the counties so that we are more ready.
Right. A pleasure to hear you, Governor. And when you use words like co-create in development and citizens' government, that warms the cockles of my heart. But then my question is at the wider county level, and from a point of view of the Council of Governors and the country response, to what extent is this community level response really being taken up by other counties, and to what extent is the Council of Governors championing this as an essential part of the response to COVID?
Of course, in terms of the County Government Act, in terms of the Constitution, public participation is an imperative. And that's the best way to really do development, to involve people in it, so that they are real stakeholders. Many counties are trying to create the institution of community health workers, maybe in terms of this development infrastructure of citizens. that's work in progress in a lot of the counties. But given our conversation together at COG, given now the necessity of home-based care because of the numbers that we are likely to get, particularly after the opening as evidenced in other countries abroad, I think this is something that even in today's meeting of COG, this is something that we are saying we must go that route of involving the community itself to be at the front line of the fight against this pandemic. But you're right in terms of it is something that is happening unevenly as of now, but we are together trying to work on it.
Governor Kibwana, even before COVID, what would you say was your attention? Where was the attention for you as a leader of the county in terms of what needed to be given attention when it came to development or infrastructure or anything like that?
I think our focus of development is precisely even the ideas we are borrowing in terms of facing COVID. In terms of we think about our development together. When we have public participation for our budget, from our population of about 1 million, we get before COVID, when matters were completely public, we get about 100,000 people from the village to what we call a cluster, several villages together, to sub-ward, to ward, to sub-county, to the county itself. So we decide what is it that we want to do together. Of course, because it's a system that is beginning, it has its challenges like all systems that begin. So we do that. Then when we decide what is to be done in a particular area, we have, again, a citizen committee to be in charge on a daily basis. And you can't be paid, for example, if that citizen committee does not approve, as people approve, as the county administration approve. So with that kind of framework, we also now decided how do we deal particularly with our agriculture. We know that agriculture has done badly when we de-emphasized extension services, so that's something that we decided we want to revive. And we also thought value addition is essential, and that's why we focused on we have fruits. We have most mangoes in the country. So we decided that we would have a fruit processing plant, particularly for mangoes to begin with, going now into juice with the assistance of the European Union. We do a lot of green grams. Actually, we are number 2 to Kitui. So also the people said, let's have pulses, a processing plant where, you clean them, you split them, you pack them, and that is about to get completed now at a place called Makindu. We did also some work on milk. So basically, we were saying, how do you add value to what you produce? And we are basically a nasal agricultural county. So that was a major thrust of our development, including other matters like universal health care. We were actually the county which was used to pilot universal health care, and we talk to people, we ask them, what do you want us to do? And people have ideas, and then we try as a government the best way we can. Of course, we prioritize integrity, and we were able, in the first year, we got first 2 years, we got bad audit reports when we were beginning. Subsequently, by 2017-18, with Nyandarua, we had a clean audit report. We ran a system of open contracting so that every information about contracting is open. You can't hide it. So if you make a mistake, that mistake is there permanent, and people are afraid to do that, so that there is openness. So integrity also is something that we prioritize.
Professor, I wanted to ask something. I actually have followed your career, and it's exemplary. Now, this matter of community health workers, what I wanted to know is, are they people who have some health background, or are they lay people?
These are lay people who get trained, and who get trained so that they are like the first level of healthcare delivery in the community. This is something that is very well done in Ethiopia, in Africa. It's done very well in India, a bit in Rwanda. And these community people are there to make sure that for our 235 facilities, having a community health unit so that each one of them is responsible for so very many households. So they make sure that people have got immunization. They make sure that people who are on ARVs are doing that. They make sure that family planning is going on well. They make sure that if you are sick and you don't want to go to hospital, they make sure that happens. If a mother is expecting and they are supposed to go to clinics, they make sure that happens. They before the dispensary, they are the second level after the household, because even the household itself must take care of its health, nutrition matters, and so on. So then the community workers, and we have been lucky because with people like AMREF, they have helped us to train these people. So we have been lucky, very lucky.
How many are there in total?
Currently, we have 4,240 of them in Makueni. We don't pay them, except now we want to explore that. In a place like Kakamega, Governor Paranya's county, there's a bit of stipend extended. And so this is within this financial year, we are thinking of a little stipend. Before, we used to help them with income generation. Income generation matters, like some border, so that as they travel to motorcycles, as they travel to the hospital, to the households, then they can also make a little bit of money, getting them into like some gardens in some of the doing a bit of agriculture. But we thought that we should supplement that with now being able to give a little stipend so that it's easier.
Governor Kivutha Kibwana, let's take a quick break, take a look at the weather, and then we continue this conversation with you. If you don't mind, we are speaking with...
I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
Very good. Governor Kivutha Kibwana is the governor of Makueni County. He's on the line with us this morning, just giving us the story of Makueni. We are looking at Makueni's healthcare system and the plans that they have in place. Let's take a look at the weather at 20 minutes past 8. Good morning.
Mostly sunny conditions in Nairobi today. We'll see a high of 23. The forecast changes just a little bit, and we might see some rain later with highs of 23 and lows of 14. It's 22 degrees that we'll see as the high in Njeri, lows of 14 and partly cloudy conditions. Mostly sunny at 14 degrees in Nakuru, highs of 23 and lows of 12. Eldoret, mostly sunny today at 13. We'll see highs of 21 with showers forecasted for the afternoon. In Kisumu, partly cloudy conditions at 18 degrees. We'll see a high of 28 and lows of 17 today. Kakamega is partly cloudy, and we will see rains in the afternoon with highs of 25 and lows of 15. Thunderstorms are forecasted for Mombasa, 25 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions at the moment. It's overcast in Malindi at 25. We'll see highs of 28 with showers later and lows of 24. It's partly cloudy in Kampala at 19 degrees. We'll see highs of 26 with showers in the afternoon and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam, light rain showers already coming down at 24 degrees, graduating to thunderstorms later with highs of 28 and lows of 22. Further down south in Johannesburg at 8 degrees, it's cloudy conditions all through today, highs of 15 and lows of 6. And finally for now in Lagos, clear skies at 24 degrees, showers and cloudy conditions in the afternoon, going well into Friday with highs of 28 and lows of 23.
15 minutes after 8 o'clock. We are on the line with Governor Kibwana. He's the governor of Makueni County. In the Situation Room is Eric Latiff, CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Njeri Thorne.
And Governor, we know there is the health side to the pandemic, but there's also the livelihood side. And my question would be, how are livelihoods affected in Makueni? But also, in view of your declaration that you'll be running for presidency, which many people welcome, what would you do with regard to securing livelihoods? The many Kenyans who have been affected by the pandemic and are hungry. What would you practically do to ensure that those needs are met as we deal with the ravages of the pandemic?
I think, first of all, when it comes to the economic side, we are focusing a lot in terms of doing blueprints for post-COVID. And yet one has to deal with the situation right now during COVID itself. And I think with this kind of partial opening that has happened, people have to be creative. And I think, for example, in Nakuru, Governor Lee Njeri was creative in terms of, if it is market where most of the people trade, you make sure that there is social distance. You can do it in a way so that that stream of livelihood is not cut. And that is something we went to Nakuru, we saw what was happening, and we said in Makueni, now, even before now the partial opening, we want to do that. Of course, there's the easy route of trying to help vulnerable groups. And we have been trying to do that. If it's old people, if it's persons with disability, we have been trying to do that in Makueni. And of course, we are very, very lucky because the previous rain and this rain, we got some good food. So at least people had food. But these palliative solutions, I think it has to go basically to what you do so that the economy that we have is shared among all our people, so that even when there are emergencies, there are pandemics and all that, people are reasonably secured. And that's a broad topic. Some of what one wants to institute in terms of when they are in leadership, of course, with other like-minded, progressive, reform-minded people. And the problem with our economy, even as we say that we have we grow 5 to 6% in normal years, most of that economy is in very few hands. So the idea is in my presidency to democratize the economy, to socialize the economy, to, for example, land, to make land available so that there's no land which is not being used for production, because there's a lot of idle land. People just have land and they don't use it. Either you tax them or you get them to ensure that this land is put into production.
You have touched on land, actually. Before you even go further, you say that you're starting on land, as you know, is an emotive subject. And if your presidency wants to ensure that all available and usable land is put to use, how do you do that?
First of all, we, of course, respect people who have legitimate titles to land, meaning that they have not taken public land. We respect that. You must respect that, because we believe in clean business. We believe in, people making wealth so that we can share it. People get jobs and all that. But if you have land and you are doing nothing with it, either you need to be taxed so that you realize that you just can't keep land without using it. And there are many mechanisms that can be used so that any land is put to productive use. For example, in the rural areas, you get parents who don't give land to the youth so that the youth can do agriculture. So again, we would have to find a mechanism for that to happen. I know it's a motive. I was a minister of land before, and that is one thing that we would have to look at. I'm not saying that I would take away land from people who have a legitimate titled land, not at all. But it doesn't make sense. You have a resource as important as land where we can do a revolution in agriculture, and people just sit on it. They just wait for it to be, more to have,
to appreciate
more
in value.
And and then they sell it. I think that's something that, because we will be co-creating a state, we will be reinventing this state together, and I will be getting these ideas from people. We say, this is the problem. How do we deal with it? And one of the things that you asked me earlier in terms of the specificity of Makueni, like we said to ourselves, we must include youth in our economy. These are times and going forward. And so for every project that we have what we call apprentices. We have youth working with the technical people, with the community people in that project. They are learning, they are earning something. We have interns who also are learning and earning something. So you have to really be creative in hard times to incorporate as many people as possible into the remnant economy, so to speak. But ideally, the issue is, how do you now grow an economy where there is a lot of domestic production? Because we emphasize a lot of export and all that. How do you do an economy so that it's not based on tenderpreneurs or policypreneurs? People who make cartels and that's it.
Yes, Governor. The question I was asking is, if you were president now, and we know people are out of jobs, we know there are people who are hungry, we know there are people who are not earning, what would you do to ensure that you cushion, that you protect livelihoods? And do you feel that is already happening?
I think there is a problem with that. That is not happening in terms of the monies that we are mobilizing for COVID. You can mobilize money not just for the health aspect. You can mobilize money so that, like now, people are restarting their businesses, like their hotels and so on. And there is no, they used all the savings that they had. So you can make monies available to them. For example, we have something we call a Tedeka Fund at 3%, which people are borrowing, so that you do stuff like that. There's the small businesses, SMEs, you extend that. I like the way of the taxes a bit, like the VAT and so on. But in our situation, for example, says we are not, people are bringing produce or taking produce away from Makueni. We don't charge that. Also, the vulnerable people, you can use the monies that we are getting for COVID, or we are put aside for COVID. So it is being intentional. It is being intentional and looking who is likely to hurt, who are hurting, and devising ways of directly engaging them with economic possibility. And I think that is not happening as much as it should. That is something that we don't just think about post-COVID. We need to think now, because we are not sure how long we are going to be with COVID.
Good points. And as we continue this conversation, Governor, it's time for us to take another quick break, take a look at traffic, what's happening on the roads. We'll see if we can, detect anything that's happening on the 47 kilometers that Makueni shares with Mombasa Road. And then we come back and continue the conversation with Professor Kivutha Kibwana, the governor of Makueni County, a man who's already come out and said, I would like to be president of the Republic of Kenya. And we are focusing now our questions into what is it that you would do that would serve the people of Kenya, that deserves their vote. Good morning. This is A Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, 8:30.
All right. Mombasa Road is what looks like some serious traffic now that has built up in the last half hour. Getting off of Mombasa Road and then towards the CBD, you'll need some patience this morning. Other parts of the city not looking too terrible. We said we're looking to Kisumu and Mombasa this morning, and it looks like as the world wakes up, traffic is not an issue. Getting into the town centre in Mombasa and out. Same thing for Kisumu, out then towards the airport, leaving town and getting into Kisumu city. Not much problems there. We'll take a look back into Nairobi in about half hour and see how that may have changed. Coming off of Thika Road right now into the CBD is okay. It's not too bad for traffic this morning. Don't forget Spice FMKE. That's how you can reach us and let us know what it is that you see in case we can offer some help of what might be a better solution.
Kenya's biggest conversation reflecting what's happening in the country and around the world. Speaking now with presidential hopeful, the governor of Makueni County, Professor Kizula Kibwana. In the room is CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, Eric Latiff, Nduh, you had a question that you wanted to
Right, Governor Kibwana, as you look at the successes that you've had in the county of Makueni and how you've been able to roll out things, do you think that this is enough to extrapolate to a national level? And the same successes then would be realized if you were to be president. Do you think what you've done in Makueni is enough to take to the national level?
I think some of what I've done in Makueni in terms of showing that what happens in one county can also happen in all counties and therefore in the country. But I'm drawing from other experience, having been part of constitution making and having known what the constitution wants to happen in our country in terms of, first of all, simply following what the constitution says, following what the law says, because that alone would help a lot. Just making sure, for example, all those rights are followed. Like we saw Sabasaba, how young people who are simply saying they want better, being confronted by the police. So that, we say, is it not possible to have a human rights state where rights are respected, the constitution is respected, law is respected, the institutions which check each other, they should be independent and all that. So there is that. Then there is my understanding of revolution, because if we made sure that there isn't the corruption that there is, and we say that we now will not we will not permit corruption, and therefore we have more money. Like 1 year EACC said in 2018, about 800 billion shillings were lost. And that's like twice how much money we get as counties. So if, again, you make more money available, and I believe in integrity, we are working as much as we can to uphold that. So I was a minister in a government. I was, I worked under Kibaki, a great Kenyan whose father was a tobacco guy, a tobacco seller.
and seller.
So I worked there. So there is that experience. I used to at the international level be president of the Climate Change Convention. So there is that experience, and some of what we have done in Makueni in terms of trying to say that you can actually get devolution to work. You can work with the people so that you listen to their voice, so that what we are saying, we co-create things with them. You don't just think that their people are told what to do. So I actually believe that I will work with Wanjiku, I will work with all of us, every Kenyan, and that Kibwana is the real Asla. Kibwana is the real people's president.
Hustler notwithstanding, Professor, what would you say are the reasons behind your success or successes?
First of all, it's believing in people, believing in the dignity of people, believing that Kibwana, any Kenyan is equal to the other Kenyan, believing that there isn't a small community and a big community, believing that all sectors, whether, person is a person with disability, whether somebody is of what gender, of what region, of what class, believing that it is possible for all of us to really do the Harambe that we talked about at the beginning of our independence. So that just believe and faith in people so that I feel comfortable when I'm with whoever. Then believing that one of the biggest resources in our country, in our continent, is the youth. And I did a lot of youth work with youth at the university, in civil society, in Makuene now. We are trying and harnessing that resource. Some of our young people are doing things that harm them because they are not seeing opportunities. So also working with that big segment, almost 60% also of our population. So I really think that Kibwana, who really wants a difference of the 57 years or so, a market difference, of course appreciating that from the beginning Kenya has not collapsed. Some African countries collapsed totally under military rule and so on and so forth. And therefore saying, yes, we have had this history, we could have done better. We wish we didn't discontinue devolution in 64. And then saying, let us not concentrate too much in the past and cry too much about the past. Let's go forward and let's succeed.
But also, let's pepper it with some reality, Professor. You've served in government, you've served in the cabinet at the highest level of government, you've served in Harambe House as the president's advisor for years. So you therefore know that there's this machinery called government and there's something called the system. That for you to be able to achieve all these things that you're talking about, a human rights state, to talk about a co-creation where public participation is very important, you have to tear down some seriously, deeply entrenched structures. How would you go about that? Changing us from the current to this new that you want to bring?
When we were trying to do the constitution, and I was in charge of, I was a spokesperson for the National Convention Assembly and the National Convention Executive Council, NCC. It was a question of negotiation. It was a question of consensus building. Some people would say, don't touch this. And we would say, there's reason to do that. There is reason for change. The people that we say are below, the people we call grassroots, and so on, they're getting tired. They want a piece of the Kenya, a piece of the cake. So in 2002, when Kibaki took over, we saw the people even wanting to arrest police who are doing bad manners. And so it means that with that power of Wanjiku, with this thinking that we need to go to another level, we will negotiate. And I know it's not easy work. I know it is not easy work at all, but many people are reasonable. Many people will see that there is the reason to change track. And these are things I'm thinking about. These are things I'm reading about. These are things I'm reflecting about. And of course, it's not just me, Kibwana, because Kibwana is just one fellow. And it will be, we are saying we are doing a movement. Even in terms of our campaign, it will be a campaign done by our people, by volunteers from all over the country to have all these ideas. And I think when we put these ideas on the table and we negotiate with whatever group, because if you demonstrate that there is possible prosperity for all, and if you have had advantage, we are not saying that we will deny you that past advantage, but of course, if some things were done very badly, we'll say no. Some of this have to be corrected, and going forward, we commit to political hygiene. We commit to good manners, good political manners.
Governor.
So I know it's hard, but it will be done. It can be done.
Yeah, Governor, great. So you want to deal with the deep state. That's your first barrier. The deep state will work against you. The other barrier is Kenyans are hardwired to engage with the deep state. We believe in political demagogues. And so when you talk about the dignity of the people and, looking really at that aspirational person that we should be, the reality is on the ground, we are far from that. Kenyan voters are not ready to get into movements. They expect politicians to do for them. So you have a problem of dealing with the deep state, but also the Kenyan voter. How palatable is, do you think you can re-engineer what you did in Makueni on a national scale with the mindset of voters as it is at present?
Unfortunately, we don't have an option. And I think even the young people who are in this social justice movement, the young people who in rural areas have no opportunities and so on, it's a reality because either you have a peaceful change or you go the way of Arab Spring and the way of what has happened elsewhere. And in Makueni, we found that people did not trust politicians. There's very low trust. But because of engaging them, because of saying that we really want to do things that they believe will change their lives, it's a gradual process with a lot of civic education. And that is why I'm saying that this campaign of 2 years is also going to be a civic education campaign, so that we ask, what have these demagogues, what have they done for you? They excite you, election season. And after that, they don't really do much thereafter. So we are going to do that. And I know it's not easy, but it has to be done. And I have said that that's part of what we want to do together.
Yeah.
And there are many forces in the country who are thinking of change. So it is going to be all those groups coming to the fore, and all those forces together now with the people. Because I know there's that ethnic thing where people are told, we represent this ethnicity and so on. But they're also getting tired, and they're seeing that route is not bearing much fruit. But we are going to have a shallow state. We are going to have a state where really it's a human rights. One can say you're idealistic, Ibwana.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in Africa, like in Ghana, they are doing that. In Africa, in Ghana, they are doing that. Young Sankara was doing that. So it's doable.
Possible.
And it is possible, and it's actually the only option.
As we get to let you go, Mr. Governor, we understand that you have another meeting. The conversation that's happening now politically is around the BBI and some of the changes that the BBI is proposing. When this rally took place in Kitui, you were there and you were speaking very much in support of what has been proposed in the BBI. Do you see that as adding to what you say as a shallow state going into the future in your presidency? The kind of structural adjustments that are being proposed in the way we govern ourselves?
That's a very, very good question. With Kiraitu, I was the representative of the COG, Council of Governors, in constitution making, the review of the constitution. And of course, things that we were interested in was how devolution would be deepened. Those were our basic interests. We are waiting for the BBI report. We will scrutinize it. I will scrutinize it. If it takes anything from the 2010 constitution, then one cannot accept that. If it takes anything away from devolution, one cannot not accept that. I think it must go through a referendum so that Wanjiku, Atieno, Amina, all and Amisi, all the Kenyans are able to vote on it as they voted on the 2010 constitution and even voted 2005. So the idea of taking it through parliament, that idea is not palatable. So we will look at it. And now, since this is the final document, it's unfortunate that the process was not as elaborate as the process for the 2010 Constitution.
Yeah.
But we will look at it now finally, and we will make, I will be able personally to pronounce on it. We will make a decision together. But if the idea is simply to have positions which only that, and they are expensive and all that, and it's not done through a referendum, and it dilutes the pollution, then one cannot accept that.
Finally, Bwana Kibwana, you're interested in being the president. So I'm going to just ask you this question directly. A powerful prime minister or not?
The parliamentary system usually, where there is proportional representation, where there is gender equity, that normally is a good thing. But this idea also of having two centers of power, so that somebody saying I am powerful, the other one, because even we are seeing with the president and deputy president, we are seeing some challenges there.
Yep.
So one has to be careful how you structure your executive so that you don't set yourself up for conflict. But let this BBI come and we look at it, and we have to be convinced that this is for Wanjiku.
Thank you very much, Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana, for speaking to us from Makueni County. We want you to come into the studio so we can spend an entire hour having a full-on discussion on this and other matters.
I thank you very much for this interview, and I am going to have a very spicy day.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
sugar and spice and everything nice for your day. Asante sana, Professor. Have a good one.
Asante.
It's 12 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Shortly, we'll just be reflecting on what we've heard from the governor of Makueni County, who is a presidential hopeful. But let's remember that City Muga is exporting some stuff. This is a shipment of avocado from Kenya, from his farm, and he wants to go and sell them in China.
Right. So now, avocado in truck at gate. You have what we're calling that position slip, right? And so you've been given that.
What color is it?
Well, it can be. Oh, let's not call it pink, because you know what a pink
can get
slip.
a triplicate.
Pink slip means one thing. Okay, so you have what is a possession slip. You're given that.
Oh dear.
Bless you.
We will get a picture of this position slip from KPA and actually show you.
We'll show you
this
the color.
is how it looks like, as long as you show us a picture of your truck.
There you go. So
Show me your
with the
mine.
oh, Wanjiru nakucheki. So the slip.
Eric went there. Just completing the conversation.
Right.
The slip then allows you your truck and the goods entry into the port, and it proceeds now through what they call the X-ray scanning by the Kenya Revenue Authority to make sure that you're not carrying any contraband within your avocado, as it has been the practice. So it's basically to make sure that all standards are met and everything that you need to do at that point is done. So we'll come back and look at the final two steps in this export process. But here, it's rather seamless, as it were, on the portal, and I guess because on the portal we're just assuming that in real life it happens just like that.
That's this way. What you need to do, the portal is giving you this information, and the portal as well allows you to have a chat with an officer on the other end. If you've got any questions, so there's a chat facility as well. If you're not understanding, like you want to ask, what color is this slip? What color should it be?
How do I know it's not
just
this
so
and the
that
other?
you know that your truck driver doesn't tell you nilipewa slip ya white, wananiambia inafaa kuwa ya yellow. You need to know this in advance, all right? So you can do the same. This is kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo, KARGO. Good morning. It's 10 to 9. quite a number of things to reflect from our interview with the Governor Kivutha Kibwana, the Governor of Makueni County. Let's start with the county's preparedness to deal with COVID-19, and then we look into the presidential ambition that he has. He talked about, they already have a bed capacity that's in excess of 300, working with institutions, KMTC, working with non-governmental organizations that have come to support them in this preparedness. And it goes to what we were talking about. Some counties that had already started doing things on the ground are a bit ahead in terms of setting in place modalities to deal with an influx of numbers of COVID-19. This is one of them, as it sounds.
It's a walk in the park for him. I mean, I think Makueni, he got it right at the point he set up the village governance structure, the community health structure, invested in health. So I think Makueni, he's right on the ball. And what he shows us is what we were saying earlier this morning. It's about leadership. When you have the right political leader who makes the right decisions, invest in the right place, then things work. So Makueni is good. I think now moving at the political level, it's a different ball game. Because of the politics. But I think the other thing he didn't come out to say very clearly, he mentioned, of course, Governor Oparanya and what he's doing. He also mentioned, I think, was it like Nakuru? But he didn't really talk about the the counties, because the Constitution says that counties are distinct. So much as counties are in the Council of Governors, the Council of Governors can sing itself blue in the face, but the governor is the final say. And so by him not talking about counties, I just got a sense that the unsaid thing is some counties are not ready.
Yep. That's the bottom line.
But even more significant, with all the sterling record that he has, there's this little detail of getting elected.
To be president.
Yeah, there's that little detail.
That's a big one.
There's a lot more.
Is it
on
a palatable idea? Governor, President Kivutha Kibwana.
Oh, very palatable. In an ideal setting.
Not ideal now, practical. 2022 is not far.
It is tricky.
Why?
It is as tricky as a donkey with 5 legs. It is tricky.
There's a lot more elements that are involved in this recipe for the national seat. Lot more. I mean, if you're just looking at the politics of it alone, and that's why I asked the question. Okay, is it enough, or is there more ingredients that are needed for this soup at the national level?
It's not your track record
that is going to put you in that seat.
No.
It is not your
Is it
track record
not
that
possible that people would look and make a decision and say, you know what, we are tired of what we've seen so far, and therefore we're going to put our weight and throw our weight behind somebody who's different.
It is possible.
And if he manages, for example, to sell the story of Makueni countrywide, so that everybody in every part of the country sees this is what we're able to do in Makueni, this is how citizens are involved in decision making in Makueni, this is how Makueni government has structured itself as a responsive government, this is what I have in. Is it not possible to rally people around and say, okay,
for sure,
even other political leaders who are influential in those other communities to come together and see?
In theory, it is.
It is possible.
In theory, it is extremely possible.
In 1.5 years, it's not possible.
But in reality,
there is a little problem. All these problems are little. There is a little problem of crisscrossing and ensuring that you debunk our voting along tribal lines. Just for starters, we vote along tribal lines. How do you overcome this one? That's number one. Yes. Please, you want to say something?
No, maybe finish. Okay. Yeah. What he's counting on is he talked about this wave and he talked about revolution. And he said people are unhappy. So it might be the time when Kenyans are ready for change and Kenyans are ready for a candidate who is not within the deep state. To answer your question in terms of, he's from Eastern. How is he going to sell himself? His success will depend on the team he pulls with him. And if we had time, we would have gotten into that. Because his success depends on not just him, who else is campaigning alongside him. Because he has to sell Coast. He has to sell, Central he might do a little bit. And Eastern and Central, he might be more palatable, but there's maybe ethnic. So who are the team?
Central?
Yeah. There's also Central is quite Mount Kenya is also quite big. So the point is his team. He can't sell by himself.
All these areas you speak of already have people who speak for them and whom they listen to.
So he has to speak to those people who speak to the people.
There's that little detail.
So that those people can actually put him up as the
If they prop him up,
Or the change.
if they prop him up, you see,
are those people willing?
they are only willing if they themselves don't want the seat.
Or if there's something in return for them? A bigger
No,
promise?
if they don't want
If
the
they're
seat.
not interested in being in that position, then it would be clear that they would be able to prop him up. But it would be very difficult for them to offer him any kind of support if they also are eyeing that position.
They can support him. Look, we've seen the NASA
Politicians
NASA
rarely
coalition,
support
coalition
competitors.
and all. It's people who want the seat, or they're saying that they want the seat, but then they reach to a point and they agree, let's support this one. And let's all come and rally behind this one.
As I said, theoretically it's possible.
It is possible. Look, let me tell you the truth. As it is now, with what he's spoken about and what he's ready to do, what he has already done at the county level, to put him at the national level, to vote him in, is actually the stuff that revolutions are made of. That is clear. With what he has to offer, and to say that a gentleman of his stature, of his experience, and even of his courage, he's not the gregarious politician that you would be, that you're used to. And you heard what he says. It's in dialogue. It's in convincing. It's in persuasion. That's how I hope to get these things done. To convince and persuade people that actually the model that I have used in one area is possible to extrapolate to the rest of the country. But again, to have that decision made is what you would look back and say, wow, that was revolutionary. And that is what has happened in many other places. And I think he talked about that as well, where he said that, you know what, I think that Kenyans are tired, and I think that they are ready for a revolution.
Kenyans can go the Malawi way.
Please remember that our voting patterns are fragmented.
That is why I said that in an ideal situation, if it was that he would be put into power, if he would be put into the position of a president, it would mean going against that kind of voting, which is why it would be revolutionary.
And one thing I like about him is he's soft-spoken, he's strong, and evidently he's a very sharp political maneuverer, because he managed to survive a county assembly that wanted him out. So I think he's also the kind of person who can unify, because he's intelligent, but he's not that
He's
abrasive
sly at
politician.
the same time.
I think he's a very sly. Well, he's a very shrewd operator in a positive way,
All
because
right.
you need to be.
Coming up to 9 o'clock, CT Muga, today's proverb.
The words of the elders do not lock all the doors. They leave the right door open.
Kenyans, please identify the right door. It's 9 o'clock. Good morning.
So where do we see the bus now? It is on Mombasa Road, trying to get from the Commanders to, even before that, at the JKIA turn off, then towards Cabanas, and then towards General Motors. That's where we see the hold up right now. Coming off of Thika Road, it seems to be a mess as well, getting into the CBD. But apart from that, everything else seems to be flowing very smoothly. We get out of traffic a little bit earlier than we did yesterday, so that's a good thing. You see something out of the ordinary, do let us know. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us. Let's have that information so we can spread it to everybody else. Maybe we get where we're going a lot faster with less troubles.
Traffic. This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial.
We will
In
continue
the
the
room,
conversation
we
about
have
counties and
CT
county preparedness for
Muga,
dealing with
researcher,
COVID-19.
academic,
Now that
seasoned
one
political
has been,
observer,
you know,
a
has now
fountain
been
of
shared.
wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian
place measures to address this. Shortly, we'll be speaking with the CEO of the Council of Governors, who will, help us to understand what the COG has been doing, what counties are doing. But as we do that, let's also now continue because we've just been talking to one of the governors and what the governor is saying, what they've done, and you're saying, all right, so yeah, that's enough. But at the national level, the voter may not care.
The voter will.
You're asking, what you're doing is you are asking Kenyans to change a very fundamental way of thinking. Our person, our people. When it comes to that seat, that one seat of the presidency, people get very our people-ish. Very. They are reasonable before you get to that point. So, as Ndu put it very well, association comes in. If one of these our people leaderships supports you, then there's a likelihood you will be able to get. But pray that our leadership person is not disliked or has not grown to be disliked by his people, because guaranteed there'll be a backlash.
You'll be on the wrong side.
Exactly. Overcoming what we have as basic standards in the country will be the professor's biggest hurdle, in my opinion. Everybody has heard of the successes he has made in Makueni. Everyone. People go there to benchmark. And I like his humility. He went to Nyandarua to benchmark.
Yep.
No, Nakuru rather.
Went to Nakuru to benchmark. Even
Yes.
Nyandarua.
Yes.
In terms of, not Nyandarua.
Not Nyandarua.
Nyandarua and Makueni are those ones that don't have audit queries.
No, they don't have
time.
audit queries. Or they have audit, everybody has audit queries, but they're responded
negative
to.
audit
No,
reports.
they don't. And whoever is auditing leaves there saying it is okay, we've understood, we go. A query becomes an issue when this query can't be explained fully.
Cannot be explained.
Yes.
Right.
Now, there are very, very few people who don't understand or admire what the good professor has done. Unfortunately, in our country, that's not
It
what
ends there.
Yes, that's not what propels you to that presidential seat. It's not.
So you need to have some sort of unifying factor that he brings in to bring everybody else, or as many people as possible, who are also campaigning or gunning for this top seat, to come and support him.
Can I bring in another factor? There is the factor of those who didn't vote, young people who didn't vote last time, who have come of age.
Yep.
And that's a totally different dynamic. And that's
Totally different.
It's a totally different dynamic, because this is why you see the president very keen to have these youth employment programs. And much as we were saying that, those are very tokenistic, the idea is they have to be seen to be doing something. So we'd have to do the numbers, because yes, there is the traditional voter that needs to be convinced, but then there's also young people who don't have opportunity, who are bearing the brunt.
So you're saying that
of
the young
exclusion.
voter thinks differently from what you call the traditional voter.
The young voter is bearing the brunt of an administration that doesn't care. So that young voter can easily be convinced about a different way to do things.
What we have in this country is not just being born by young people.
No, but in terms of numbers, when you're talking about politicking,
yes, if you say
there's
there are
that
more,
aspect.
it is true, because there are more. So more of them are likely to feel the brunt. But are you saying that because they fall in this category of youth, that they will vote differently, or they will think differently than what you call the traditional voter?
Yes, they will think differently.
Than their previous youth.
They will think differently.
In every election cycle, there's a new group of youth that's coming in. And over the last, let's say, 2 decades, the majority is new youth getting into the voting block. So when you look at 18 million people who vote in this country, the majority now increasingly is becoming the youth.
And for a long time, it's been youth.
The thinking is the same. So they come in and you look at what is their thinking. They're still following this, what they have grown up seeing and what they've grown up knowing. So I think there's a way in which our political culture has been inculcated in us as we grow up. So by that time, when you get your ID, you get your voter's card, you're thinking the same way, like, okay, so who is our person? If you're in Nyanza, you're looking Raila. If you're in Ukambani, you're thinking, but Kalonzo is a leader, so everybody else must look at Kalonzo. If you're in Central, you're thinking, so who is it?
Actually, they don't.
The reason why I think this could be a factor is because we are looking at the milestone elections, 203, which really was opposition versus Moi. So that one was
202 or 203?
202.
Yeah, 202 election. Then the 207 would be maybe the one 2013 is the one that you would then measure how did youth vote at that time to look at those indications. So you're talking about every 10 years and asking where have youth been in that 10 years? And I would say this government has been particularly hostile on youth because it has hit some of the youth sectors. There's been very high unemployment under this government as opposed to the Kibaki government. The other thing is technology has spread, more people are on phone and able to get memes and follow things and all of that. You've had also human rights violations, have always been there against the youth. But like we were saying yesterday, in Kibaki's time, it was mainly the Mungiki.
No.
Now you're having across the board violations of, if you let me finish.
No, I'm just adding, I'm saying not true.
Police,
it was Mungiki, it was the youth who were crossing over into Somalia, so the entire coastal belt, there was a whole issue of
There was a whole region of Nyanza.
There was a whole region of Nyanza.
Yes.
I put it to you that under Kibaki's time, there were more economic opportunities because the economy was growing and it was growing in a more inclusive way. So that there's a whole band of young people who came out of school and went into informal sector but went into jobs. That hasn't happened here. There've been more young people who've been kicked out. So I do think there is a level of disaffection. I think the media patterns and the political awareness patterns are changing.
So let's look at the thinking of the youth in 2013, right? After 10 years of Mwai Kibaki, what you're saying was with glowing tributes to what happened to the youth. So the youth were feeling energetic and energized. What was their thinking? How did they vote? There was a candidate who came and he was trying to position himself as the youth candidate, Peter Kenneth.
You're right.
Then we have the incumbent, Raila and Kalonzo, who were Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, one ticket. And then we had the Ocampo too, the other ticket. How did the youth vote?
10 years ago. And are we talking about the same political patterns now? So you're right. The Peter Kenneth, you're right.
It's the same
Peter
cycle,
Kenneth
10-year cycle.
So we can then say that we may see maybe a Peter Kenneth type scenario or a slight improvement, or the last 10 years of political education via phone, whatever that is, may bear difference. The other thing change factor is possibly maybe his campaign strategy could be different. Other politicians campaign on dishing out. He's talking about persuading, speaking to the heart and mind. That could be a game changer. So no, I don't write off Kivuda Kibwana. Whether he makes it in 2022, I can't say for sure, but he'll definitely be a game changer. And the question is maybe, is he in this like Kibaki did? Kibaki had to fight to get in there to implement what he wanted.
Please, get this thing right. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not Kibaki fought. There was a coalition with Kibaki. When Kibaki became president, it wasn't just Kibaki. Kibaki had people with him who had power in other regions.
Agreed. Which is the same thing Kibwana needs.
Kibwana got in that first election because of his credential. No, I've gone to Kibwana.
In Makueni now.
In Makueni, yes. Now, but then, his track record even then was so impressive that his people were willing to give him a second term.
So when he disbanded everything and said, all right, if there's an issue here, let's go back to the poll.
But remember, Kibwana had been doing stuff in that region. He had been doing. Time. He had been. If you've been to Makueni, you will know what it's like, right? It's not the most. Should we say green?
It's not an oasis in Eastern.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So he had been doing stuff. Someone like Ngilu, every time she was a minister, issues were raised about her focusing a lot of the development projects just in Kitui, not her area, Kitui. But it managed to convince her people that she's the sort of person who brings
We'll
development.
fight for our
You
people.
see? Now, there are other governors who got in because of the party that they were in. I'm saying this because if you want to realistically talk about the possibility of a Kivuta presidency, it's the same realism and a lot more added to it that would even give him that, put him on the starting block. Because what he's facing has nothing to do with his track record. It is besides his track record completely. And that besides his track record is the reality of our politics.
Yeah.
And especially if you want...
May have. We don't know that.
So he's got to bend
No,
the
I
middle.
You
think
don't
he's got-
know. You don't know. You know, the way people relate changes because of what they consume. So that voter who is socially
You're putting a lot of
Consensus.
stock on social media.
On
Social
political
media for many people is
enlightenment.
entertainment. It doesn't change their political views.
No, when you're watching Donald Trump and listening to these conversations, it may be entertainment, but it changes you politically. So what I'm saying is, the time of the demagogues may be over anyway. It may be over anyway. And he may be there at just the right time to capitalize on that change.
You know how they say, Salamu Nibure. even wishing Nibure. We can wish.
So this is all wishful thinking.
It's
You think he's being
it is
wasteful?
no. It's you.
You're
I'm
stuck on
saying,
that. You're stuck on this reality of your city.
Yeah.
You're thinking like this reality cannot change. It's like saying
I am not
you're
saying it can't change. I am
changing this
saying
thing
in
is
the
like
last 10
cutting
years it hasn't changed. That's
It's like
what I'm
cutting
saying.
the Mogumo tree with a razor blade.
No, in the last 10 years it hasn't changed. That's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to tell you. It
Time
hasn't
counts
changed.
for something. That's
There
my
was
point.
one youthful MP who got in Meru. Okay?
Yep.
That man did something very fantastic. Simple but fantastic. He started investing what he could in the education of people in his area. Bought these revision books and the area did well. But people liked him. He was a good speaker. Youthful. We've had youthful leaders who've had stints in parliaments. But the point I'm trying to make is on a larger scale. That happens in places where already the voters are fragmented. They have many choices, like in Western Kenya. They have choices. There'll be Amani, there'll be Ford Kenya, there'll be New Ford Kenya,
Ford
there'll be
Asili.
ODM, there'll be Ford Asili. So people are fragmented. But you will find in many parts of the
So
country.
the largest minority
Yes.
wins.
Yes.
So what we're saying is the odds are stacked against him because he has
Oh,
to
seriously,
contend
not
with...
stacked. Seriously stacked.
Seriously, he has to contend with the deep state that's going to ensure it manipulates the
Unless it
electoral
supports him.
process.
Yes.
He has
True,
to deal
unless
with...
it supports him.
He has to deal with the political culture. So he needs a sharp political strategy, which is the least to say. If you're going for presidency, you better have that.
You should
What is
have
it
one
that-
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a basic
What is it?
entry.
What is it that Lazarus has done in Malawi? In a span of 10 years, this man who was just the leader of a religious organization has come in and has toppled the families that have been ruling Malawi.
But he has gotten in with
When we
the
spoke-
party that got them into independence, remember? Just for starters. But if you listen to his rhetoric, and if you look at the country of Malawi, one, they are an extremely religious people. Part of what contributes that level of religion is serious poverty. Not just this garden variety poverty that people talk about. Serious. Now, when you've had this leader and the other, and it is clear all they're doing is amassing wealth and amassing wealth and amassing wealth, they don't have a devolved system like ours. People genuinely get fed up. Now, this guy has the power, a preacher, an evangelist. He actually, even before he goes into politics, he already has a certain power
Yep.
to be able to talk convincingly. You turn that into politics, and you turn your preaching into preaching the good kingdom that the politics can bring to you. People will listen.
And you know,
And
and
then
it's
the right
very
political
interesting because
party.
another thing that he did is, just like you're saying, at the time where there was, I mean, if you want to talk about grand corruption, talk about what was going on in Malawi. They steal what you can see. Then the one that's in your mouth, they even open your mouth.
And
The one that you're about to swallow and still remove it from your mouth. So at that point, that was what was going on. And so Lazarus basically went in. Exactly. The religious aspect helped. We cannot run away from that. But at the same time, he let the people see firsthand what a Malawi would look like when the money was not being stolen from
So
you.
he just converted
When
prosperity gospel from going to heaven
Yes,
to here.
yes,
in your life.
directly, so that people could have a tangible
visioned.
experience of what this thing actually meant. So you convince their mind and you convince their heart. Unstoppable.
All right. Professor
Kivuda
Kivuda
needs to
Kibwana
work
has
with the
3
communication
master's degrees.
strategist.
All right. Kivuda Kibwana has 3 master's degrees. 2 of those masters are in law, one from London, one from Harvard, and the 3rd master's degree is in theology.
So there it is.
He's a very
I've
wow.
just said what I've asked. All right, 16 minutes after 9.
Wow.
That man is impressive. It doesn't
Let's
matter
look
how
at
you
the
look at
weather.
it.
Let's look at the weather and then continue this conversation. We'll also open up the phone lines for you to participate in this discussion. 0719 012 600. President Kivuda Kibwana, possible, not possible. Good morning.
So it's turning out to be a mostly sunny day in Nairobi today. That's what we will see. The chance of rain is high for the afternoon, highs of 23. In Njeri today, 22 degrees the high with partly cloudy conditions throughout. In Nakuru, 16 degrees and sunny conditions all through, highs of 23 and lows of 12. Eldoret is mostly sunny at 14 degrees, highs of 21 and lows of 11. Showers expected in the afternoon. Kisumu is sunny, highs of 28 and lows of 18. Kakamega at 19 degrees is partly cloudy. You'll see rain showers in the afternoon with highs of 25 and lows of 15. In Mombasa, rain showers have started coming down. They're light though. It'll graduate to thunderstorms later with highs of 28 and lows of 24. Cloudy conditions in Malindi, highs of 27, lows of 24 with thunderstorms later on. It's 21 degrees in Kampala, highs of 24. We'll see showers in the afternoon, and the same will be in Dar es Salaam, which is currently at 25 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions. We'll see highs of 28 today. All right, Johannesburg, a fog has set in on the city and it's likely to last through into the evening. Highs of 16 and lows of 6. Partly cloudy conditions in Lagos at 24 degrees. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 23 with showers in the afternoon. All right, New York inching closer to morning, 24 degrees, and the sun will come out full blaze and blast. 31 degrees the high and lows of 23. In London, cloudy conditions at 16 degrees. We'll see highs of 20 and lows of 12 with a forecast of a slight drizzle within the city. And finally, in Paris, 18 degrees and sunny conditions all through today with highs of 31 and lows of 18.
So you see, so if we're talking about, understanding the people and the psyche, how to communicate with them, the
If you can study it, and like my auntie says, you can have as many degrees as a thermometer, but the delivery also is extremely important. There was a way, if we're going to go back to Lazarus and use the Malawi example, there was a way in which he delivered whatever it is that he was speaking, and then he was then able to convince the people of what it is that he carried in his mind. And there's a special gift that you must have, as a leader, as a politician. There's a special gift that you have. That's why certain
You must have the
people
charisma.
Yeah, that's why certain
a
people.
crowd puller.
That's why certain people are selected for this position. Even if you want to look at someone like Donald Trump and his clownish shenanigans, there's something he has that he's able to speak something that somebody would be able to say, okay, perhaps.
Wait.
No,
Yes.
there was something that he appealed to some.
He's selling populism.
Millions of votes.
He's selling
On that.
populism.
Yeah,
On that.
whatever he's selling, he was
Whatever
able to
he's
actually
selling, he was able
people.
to convince people.
Right. Well,
Dislodge many people in the Republican
Or at the
hierarchy.
very least,
hierarchy
or at the very
and got
least,
the
to
ticket.
resonate with somebody's creed.
Yep.
so did
And that's what he did.
very own Sonko, who's very, very similar in terms of,
800,000 votes in Nairobi.
Right.
How?
So now the point
Yeah.
with Kivuda is he's exemplary in terms of track record and just his own credentials. Now the fact that he managed to woo Makueni voters twice, was able to withstand a very aggressive onslaught by the county assembly. Despite his very soft-spoken demeanor, I believe he knows how to talk to, how to convince.
He sits down with you, he'll convince you.
Yes, so maybe he needs to get up close and sell that message and reason with people, because it has worked for him.
Did you hear
so
what
the
he
question
said?
is,
His strategy is also to use the grassroots mobilization.
right.
So convince a group of people,
Right.
the TOT model, and let those ones go and campaign for you.
The other person who went in recently and overthrew Raila in Kibra is what's he called?
McDonald Mariga.
No, yeah, the one who went in. Yeah, because
In Kibra.
yes,
Kibra.
Okoth,
Okoth.
Ken Okoth,
Imran Okoth.
yeah, Imran Okoth.
Overthrew?
Imran Okoth, of course, was riding on
His brother's victories.
name. But not only that, he was the grassroots guy for his brother. That's what a lot of people didn't know.
He was his CDF
wa-
manager.
He not only CDF
Yeah.
manager,
And the
Ken
campaigner.
Okoth had a grassroots approach. And the point I'm making here is Imran refused to engage media. He did not speak loudly. And in fact, people were saying, we don't hear this guy, we don't know who he is. And he was able to get through, even though Baba had put his support on the other candidate.
Which
So-
other candidate?
Oh, no, okay, I stand corrected. Even though Jubilee had put in Mariga and had put all their money for Mariga. So he was able to get through because of the community mobilizing support.
You know,
And Baba.
one of the
Baba.
things, one of the things,
It wasn't just Baba, by the way.
But you
sister.
would be very surprised that the support that came through was not just, it was definitely indirect support
but
of Raila Odinga.
Hold on. No. There's actually, let me go back, because I remember having this conversation.
But you
And
were
at
not
that
in a
point,
book.
where was Baba? No, where was Baba's vote in terms of Baba?
In
Imran
Kibra.
was not
In Kibra.
No,
During the
Imran was
by-election
not
or
the
during the
Baba.
first time? For
Imran
Ken,
was
of
not
course.
the Baba candidate. Hello.
who was then?
Hold on. Let's let.
Oh, there was all this talk
Let
about
me
all
check.
these other, among the other
No, let me
candidates
check,
for
let me check,
nomination.
Let me check.
Among the candidates for nomination,
Tuendelee.
that Imran had not come out as among the strongest.
No,
but
let's.
But did he not emerge as the strongest?
Okay, Tuendelee. We have
You
other
know,
things to discuss.
there's
right?
some-
our guest who wanted to speak to on the phone has now joined us on the phone. She's Jacqueline Mugeni. She's the CEO of the Council of Governors. Good morning, Jacqueline.
Morning.
Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to the Situation Room.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
Thank you for having me.
In the previous hour, we were speaking to Governor Kivuta Kibwana from Makueni, and before we went into his presidential ambitions, we started by looking at what the Makueni is doing to address COVID-19 and the preparations that have been put in place by the county government on COVID-19. Now, we want to discuss with you the same from where you sit at the Council of Governors. Now, the burden shifts, and we are looking now at all the 47 counties. Each of them has to be ready for to deal with COVID-19. From where you sit, how are they looking?
Not bad.
Not
the
bad.
counties are actually ready.
Could you
The
please
counties,
expound on what is on the not bad?
You know, when someone says not bad, it's instructive to know that they didn't say good.
Yeah, they are okay. Actually, they are ready to deal with the emergency, the pandemic. Of course, we all know that every other country, even the developed countries, get overwhelmed by this pandemic, because sometimes it's like it begins to sprout, all seeds begin to sprout at the same time. So if that happens, the truth of the matter is that they will experience challenges like any other country. But as we speak, they have already established their county emergency response committees, which coordinate the emergencies up to the household, up to the household level, because now we've moved into home-based care, and many counties have prepared. Their county health volunteers are working from house to house just to educate the masses, but also tell them what needs to be done. The guidelines that have been provided by Ministry of Health and the protocols by the Ministry have been adopted, and they are being implemented across all the counties. If you talk about quarantine, all of them have, 47 counties have about 18,838 bed capacity in terms of quarantine facilities. There are about 933 people in quarantine as we speak in 38 counties. About 382 of them have already been have tested negative, and we're expecting that they should be released so that those beds will be available for other people. So we're just waiting for the final test, and then they can go home. So in the last 1.5 weeks, for example, there's been a general decrease of people in the quarantine facilities. And we think that, and we'll be hearing that in the next press statement next week, to see what is the number of people who are in self-quarantine at home. Because we're encouraging people to do self-quarantine in all the 47 counties. And then in the event that people need to be isolated, we have about 11,760 isolation beds in all the counties. So we can be able to deliver jointly for all the counties, together with some at national level. We can be able to deliver about 30,500 isolation beds. So that tells you that in the event that the disease go to that level, we are ready. In the event that it exceeds 30,000, then of course we are going to face a problem. And not because we are not prepared, but because it will be overwhelming.
But may I ask, do the counties also have corresponding personnel to meet the need?
Yes, we have trained about, in terms of personnel, we've trained about, can I even remember the numbers offhand? Yeah, so far we have about 8,680 human resource staff that have been recruited, and they have already reported their workstations. In addition to the personnel that we already have in the counties, we had 26,000 nurses then. So we've added an extra 8,000, and all these are nurses because we've not really added doctors. We've added nurses and clinical officers. We had about 4,000 clinical officers before. So in addition, so now they are ranging in the region of about 8,000. The Ministry of Health, the national government, has actually supported counties to add this extra staff. And they're going to do another phase 2 of recruitment. They are on contracts for about 3 years. So yes, we have enough personnel. We've also about 11,000 thereabout community health workers. So yes, we have community health volunteers, we have nurses, we have doctors, all of them ready. But of course, we're not going to deploy all of them for COVID. There are other diseases that we are also handling. You see, because some of our indicators have started to go down. So we need to enhance immunization for the children below 5 years. There are NCDs, the non-communicable diseases, we are handling that. They have to go to their clinics. HIV/AIDS is a challenge. It had gone down. People are fearing to go to the hospital. So we are using the CHVs to go to the communities to look out for those who have gone underground. Because if they do that, you see the disease can mutate, especially for people who are TB patients. So we are ensuring that both services are going on. So we have facilities that we reserved for COVID, and we have the others going along. So yes, we have, but for sure the health workers are not enough because they work in shifts. It's a very heavy responsibility to take care of COVID patients. So they work in shifts. So they are not enough. We have increased the numbers, but we are not enough. They are for sure going to get overwhelmed if the disease goes beyond the numbers that have been given to us by the command center.
Would you say that all the counties have sufficient protective gear to ensure that they deliver the services that are required of them?
On the PPEs, let me just say that the PPEs is a big challenge because the counties were purchasing the PPEs, and of course, at first, the PPEs had to come from outside. We know what happened when all the borders were closed. The PPEs were not able to come in. So then we got to buy PPEs locally. Some of the quality was very poor. This was the issue of quality is KEB's responsibility, not counties. So we're getting some PPEs that were of very low quality. You heard about the numbers of the community health workers. The health workers who've been infected, and they were attributing this to poor PPEs quality. Now the Ministry of Health told us last week that we shouldn't purchase any PPEs. They have enough PPEs to supply to the counties. So they asked us to do accumulatively a table and a request and send to them. We sent to them last week. Yesterday, the PS said they will begin to distribute this PPE through cancer. So as we speak, PPEs are not enough. We are waiting for the supply from the Ministry of Health because they told us not to purchase, to use the resources instead to ensure we have adequate beds, the 300 beds. So counties are focusing more on the beds now. PPEs, the ministry has told us they are giving us. So if you hear there's no PPEs, it's not our fault. We are waiting for them from the ministry.
Jacqueline Mugani, the CEO of the Council of Governors, is on the line with us in the Situation Room this morning. We're looking at how counties are setting themselves up to prepare for a likely upsurge of numbers of COVID-19 patients. She's giving us the numbers. She's telling us, she's sounding very optimistic and positive that the counties are actually putting in place very good measures to prepare for this. Let's continue this conversation soon after this short commercial break. Take a look at traffic, what's happening on the roads, and then we have continue this conversation with Jacqueline Mugani. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
All right, we're officially out of traffic hour. Most of the roads where we saw some drama earlier, that has been sorted out. There was some burning of tires in Gong, and this has affected traffic then coming down Gong Road. But that has been taken care of. We don't know the reason why, but we know that traffic was affected as a result of that. Looking at other parts, though, coming off of Mombasa Road and then Thika Road as well, those issues seem to have been sorted out and everybody's gone where they were getting to. It looks like we'll only talk about traffic later on in the afternoon, but for now, everything looks A-okay.
Traffic.
We continue the conversation with the CEO of the Council of Governors, Jacqueline Mugani, who is joining us on the line.
Yeah, Jackie, good morning. Good to hear you. You say that counties are ready. You've got the community volunteer systems in place. And you're awaiting the PPEs from government. I have a couple of questions. With regard to the testing kits, are those enough? And then with regard to resources, we note yesterday the governors made a statement about money. Now, it seems that there's a shortage of money. What is playing out in that regard, and in what way might that impede the county's ability to respond?
Okay, now I did not say that we are waiting PPEs from national government only. We already purchased some. And so as we were opening up, there was an agreement that the country will begin to open, we were advised by the Ministry of Health that we shouldn't continue buying the PPEs, that the resources we have that we were given by His Excellency the President, 5 billion, should be committed to, not 5 billion for every county, 5 billion divided according to the disease burden to all the counties. We should now use it to do the beds, buy ventilators, equip our ICUs. And so most counties are doing that. As I say, 26 have already reached the 300 bed capacity. 21 haven't. And so we are waiting for additional PPEs because we had some. But remember, they are not enough because cumulatively we have about 64,283 community health volunteers who we have now trained and sensitized on COVID, who will be responding to that COVID. And now that we are going to home-based care, so they can't go to the home without PPEs because they'll also get infected. So you can imagine that we need, and the ones that are disposable, you only use one. So if you get disposable, 64,000, one. But if they're doing contact tracing and all this for home-based care, they will need the ones that you can use maybe for the whole day, and then they can go for laundry. And so it's a whole mix. So that is where we are. We are prepared, yes, but we know that there are those disadvantages. Now on the testing kits, remember, county governments do not test. We collect samples, And then we send them to the national influenza laboratories and the Cambridge, the laboratories that have been set apart by the Ministry of Health. And sometimes it takes so long. Like, you can imagine a place like Wajir sending them, so a place like Mandera. So now Wajir laboratory was certified, but we don't have testing kits because testing kits are supposed to come from the national government, from the Ministry of Health. So that is where the problem is. We collect the samples. It takes like a week or so to get the samples tested and then sent back, the results sent back. So testing kits, we don't have enough, not because the ministry is not able to provide, but because they are coming from outside and we cannot be able to access them, especially when we are across the border. They were coming in kidogo because the whole world is depending on these testing kits. We have the machines that could do this testing, the gene expert machines, but we don't have the reagents again. So it's a long story about testing. So that is where we are.
So you're saying that the 5 billion shillings is being shared out among the counties, and mainly it's going to infrastructure, buying beds and kitting those hospitals and buying the ventilators.
Yeah, so maybe if I could just quickly tell you, like for example, we've set up on the intensive care, the ICUs. Cumulative in all the 47 counties, we have 447 ICUs. And then we have 437 ventilators across all the 47 counties. Now, the ones that are ready.
Yep.
There are some counties that for sure do not have any ICU, they do not have any ventilator. So, when the minister said that when you get sick, you have to be treated in your county, that's already a challenge there.
Yeah.
And I don't think he means evil. I mean, the reality is, if I got sick today in Nyamira, I come from Nyamira, so how will you transport me to Nairobi? The truth of the matter is I have to be treated there.
You ought to be treated
God forbid
in Nyamira.
if Nyamira does not have an ICU and I need oxygen, I have to be put on some machine. That's it. That's the reality.
Yeah.
I think it's important Kenyans know the truth.
So for all the things that you've said so far, Jacqueline, I think now I understand why your initial response then was okay, because there seem to be so many holes here and there, from ventilators to testing to collection of samples to beds. So then really, if you want to do a check of it, then should the country be satisfied that things are okay when it comes to fighting COVID with the recent measures then that have been put in place, where responsibility now lies on the counties? Is it all right?
Yes, because remember, we are now going home-based care. Surely there's a home everywhere. So if you got sick and you are asymptomatic, you have symptoms which don't need you to be in an ICU, we can manage. We will manage. The only
How exactly do you propose to manage the patient who is going to be at home?
Isolation, I think that's what we've been told. The ABCs for COVID-19 is you isolate yourself for 14 days, don't interact, and so the family keeps just checking on you. If you have a phone, or they give you a phone and saying, the food is put at the door, you pick it.
Keeps checking on you, they expose themselves to the virus as well.
The question is, how do you manage this process?
You see, we have guidelines that have been provided, the home-based care guidelines, and even in the press of the chairman, he said if the radio stations could spare an hour a day just to educate the Kenyans on the ABCs of the home-based care. If you are asymptomatic, for sure you shouldn't be taking up a quarantine bed or an isolation bed, because you can be managed from home, because you're not having difficulties in breathing that you need oxygen. It is just you have pain and all that. That can be managed from home. Remember, we have community health volunteers, 64,000 of them. They will help the guide. They will guide the family on what you're supposed to do. So they will not. You see, they won't come there and then you open the door and then they talk to you. No, they just put the food there and then they knock. The food is out there, so you pick it yourself. When you also finish, you put the plate out there. They will wear gloves and pick the plates, wash them separately. Just like they were treating at first the AIDS patients before we knew how best to manage. It is the same way. So yes, we are prepared to that level. But in the event that it degenerates to a level where everybody who is sick will need to be put on a machine, that will be a problem. And actually, it's not because we are not prepared. It's because it's overwhelming. That would be the statement. Not that the counties were not ready. Only the counties are the 21. But beds are there. We have beds. Machines are the ones that are not enough. But we have isolation beds. We have enough. Really.
The global formula for fighting COVID-19, Jackie, is test, contact trace, isolate, and or treat. So it seems like we are already dealing with the other side of If treatment is needed, we'll have bed capacity. We're working on increasing our ventilators and all. But testing, from the very beginning, if we don't have the capacity to test and we don't have the modalities for contact tracing, how are we going to deal with the other two?
Now, we have, I'll answer the question from the bottom. We have modalities for contact tracing. We have over 64,000 community health workers who have been trained. Remember, there are others who haven't been trained. So the number could be as high as 100, but we are saying, unless we train you, you can't be our community health volunteer. Why? Because you need to understand what it takes to to contact trace a COVID patient and to bring that COVID patient to a facility or to educate them on home-based care. So that we have capacity. Now, you see, testing is not the work of county governments because we don't have the kits. We collect the samples and then we take them to the laboratories. We have 12 laboratories all over the country that have been certified by the Ministry of Health, that are being run together, KEMRI and the National Laboratory, Influenza Laboratory. The rest, you see, we can't because we don't have kits. And kits are not from the counties, kits are from the national.
Okay.
And the national is also depending on some importing. So it's not really a blame, is to say that we can't do the testing as is required. So there, for sure, there's an inadequacy, not of our making, but because of the global challenge.
So what is it that's going to happen now in terms of testing? What are the modalities in place? Are you going to say that people will present themselves to hospitals and that's when they'll be detected or screened for COVID-19?
No. We are screening. The screening is being done, by the way, throughout. The thermograms are being done. That is how we are picking out people with temperatures, and the ones who are high temperatures and are asymptomatic are being isolated and being quarantined here. So that one is going on. It is the sample testing that is a bit of a challenge because of the kits.
Which is what I'm asking. Practically, what are the modalities in place? We know that from Mandera, the nearest facility is going to be in the next county or several counties away. So once this thermogun has been used somewhere in a village and somebody has been found to have a high temperature and they're suspected to have COVID, how are you going to establish whether they have COVID so that you can move into the next step?
Okay, let me pick a practical one, matatu. That people are moving all over with public transport. That's very practical.
Yep.
So all public transport vehicles in all the counties are required to have, first of all, sanitation facilities at the bus stops, and of course, with their sanitizers. In the event you don't get a passenger from a bus stop to pick them along the way, they need to sanitize before they get in. Now, before they get in, they'll be tested because that's what the doctors are calling a triage. And they're saying we can pick 80% of the cases from just that triage, a simple tool. So if the scout, whatever it's called, conductor, finds that the person has temperature, he calls, there's a line. All of us, each county has an emergency line, which is known to, which has been circulated. And also the community health volunteer of that area. So the person will not be told, and then you're abandoned there, people are gone, because you could disappear. So then they call the line, it is a toll-free line, and say, we have this person here who has recorded this high temperature. The community health volunteer nearest, is like an Uber, is the one who will respond and come and pick this person. Because, it's very stressful to be told you have COVID-19, especially if people don't understand. They just see a death sentence. So they are picked, they are cancelled, and if it's a home-based isolation, it will be done. If it's a quarantine thing, it will be done. If it's an isolation in the hospital, the community health volunteers are the ones who work with us. We're also working with the Nyumba Kumi, the national government structure called Nyumba Kumi. They are security, but now for this purpose, they have to come in and also assist. So we have all those people connected because there are little committees in every county up to the household level and up to the village level. So they're the ones who are helping in picking up these people who have the symptoms and they are asymptomatic. So if you say and the temperature continues to go up, then that's when now the sample is needed. But if you go in, you're asymptomatic and we are managing, the paracetamol is working, there's really no need of taking you into a hospital, to take up a hospital bed for somebody who will need to be on oxygen.
Yeah, Jackie, it's, I think, very good to hear that we have set up this home-based care system all,
on paper.
And hopefully this system will become a permanent way of delivering health, because this is as it should be. So a crisis is is helping us implement something very positive. But I'll go back to the statement made by the COG yesterday, where the chair asked for national government to release funds in a timely way. Which funds are these that are not being released? The chair also said there is a challenge in disseminating information. Who is facing this challenge?
Okay, on the money issue, we haven't received the county governments have not received their June disbursement. And remember, we're in July. The financial year has closed. I don't know the reason. I think that one the National Treasury should speak to it. But all I know, where I sit as the CEO Council of Governors, is that 47 county governments have not received cumulatively 31 billion. That is so critical in helping to deal with this COVID issue. Remember, the resources that we got of the 5 billion, for a county like Isiolo only got 16 million. To do a very good ICU is about 7 million. So those are 2 ICUs only, 2 beds. So I think it's very important the resources that are being held to be released, as the chairman said. And we all know why also. The country has been facing a challenge. The economy almost basically just got to its knees because of this COVID-19. So as much as we want to understand, but we also have a service to deliver. And if something goes wrong in a county, nobody will be blamed but the governor. So that's why the governors are saying, please release the resources, because we need those resources to equip our people, even to just buy the basic medicine, the paracetamol that you need. We need that. And even the allowances we need to give to our community health volunteers. They are volunteering, but they need some transport to go around the villages or a border or something like that.
They need to be facilitated, of course.
Yes, it will be facilitated. That can't come from the governor's pocket. And even so, the governor will not have any money, because remember, if the money hasn't come for June, nobody has a salary.
True.
So we'll be facing a challenge about salaries. And then people will be saying, these governors, why don't they ever pay people? So that is our story that nobody ever knows.
Let's take a pause, Jacqueline,
communication.
because there's a second question of communication which we'd like you to respond to. But let's take a quick break, go into a quick commercial break here, where we are helping CT Muga to export some consignment of avocados to China. And he's already gone through the process. His truck has entered the KPA, has already proceeded to X-ray scanning area by KPA. We have established it by KRA. We've established that what you're carrying is avocados. What the truck is carrying is avocados. Next.
Right. That's a place, right? But okay. So now you're through the scan, CT. Your truck proceeds to the KRA stacking area. So basically, everything is removed from your truck and then it's offloaded. The export cargo is offloaded and then it's loaded onto the ship and the ship sails. This all happens. You can see it. And then you can bring it actually to track and trace where it's actually going from there.
I can see it.
You can track and trace. Unless you're going to be on the sea. I don't know. Follow your shipment.
You, depending on what shipping agent you're using, basically, they'll give you that facility to be able to track as well, right? And from here, once the cargo has been loaded onto the ship, KPA has processed and has handed over the consignment onto the ship that you and your shipping agent had agreed to use.
On. Yeah, and you can keep on the portal, because on the portal will show you exactly what is happening in real life.
In real life?
Yes.
kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. This is KARGO. It's a new portal developed by KPA to help you understand the processes of KPA, to help you understand the running of the Kenya Ports Authority, not just in the port of Mombasa, but also in all the other facilities that they manage across the country. 10 minutes to 10. Quick break, and then we continue our conversation with Jacqueline Mugani. Conversation continues with the CEO of the Council of Governors of the Republic of Kenya, Jacqueline Mugani, and we're talking about the county's preparedness to deal with COVID-19. The second question, Jackie, that Wanjiru had asked you is with regards to what the COG chairman had asked yesterday. We need facilitation in communication, because communication is important for everybody to know what they need to know about fighting COVID-19. What challenges is it that the chairman was talking about?
All the protocols we have are in English. And being medical protocols, some of them are, like when something like in the home-based care guideline, there's something like comorbidity. What is that? I am a lawyer by trade. I have no clue what that means. So you can imagine the community health volunteers are supposed to be helping to unpackage that and tell it to the community. Also, we need a lot of radio programs. So for that to happen, we need the resources. If not, then the national government, it's a bit difficult to expect the national government to communicate to all the 47. I know there is KBC and all that, but really, a lot of citizens listen to FM stations that also speak in a language they understand.
Vernacular and community stations.
Vernacular and community stations, that's what we are saying, that we need to be enabled in terms of resources, because in terms of the people, we have enough people. The community volunteers can go to the community radio stations and speak, because people know them. Jacqueline meant to speak on an FM station. They don't know me, who is Jacqueline, because I'm a bit removed from them. But their seat, they know. The governor, they know. So it needs to be the people who they know, because they can ask those people questions that are really, really home, like questions to the neighbor, so that people can understand. So far, that hasn't happened.
But one would expect, Jackie, that during the summits that were happening in the last 1 month between the President and the Council of Governors, in readiness for this reopening of the country, these are some of the issues that were coming up in the conversations.
So the summit is, we can't discuss everything. There are things you can discuss, some things can fall through the cracks. And so it's a learning process. We make mistakes as we keep learning. COVID is not going away tomorrow. So I think it requires also for us to be patient with each other, both levels of government, continue talking. Once in a while you fight, but you resolve it, because it's the same Kenyan that we are. So, it happens.
Jackie, on Monday we had a conversation about the budget, and we noted that the national government budget is looking at growth as opposed to looking at stabilizing the economy, which in direct terms means they are not allocating sufficient money to the fight against COVID. Could it be that the counties are also doing the same, not stopping non-essential expenditure to reallocate to COVID?
That's a difficult question. Now, the counties themselves, we are doing a socioeconomic re-engineering, and now we are calling it recovery. Call it recovery or whatever it is. So, but anyway, that's what it's called: socioeconomic re-engineering recovery study, to help us look at our budgets and see how do we as county governments address COVID in our budgets for this financial year. So we haven't seen the budgets for county, but that is what the governors themselves are the ones who say this is critical. So we got Kipra to help us do this study and help and look at the budget, not just the budget, look at the CIDP and the annual plans for each county government, and also ask each county government, what are your priorities? And then they advise on how to engineer the normal process, because we can't do things as normal. COVID is here. And then how do we talk about recovery? I'm a bit shocked that that is your analysis of the national government budget, because if you look at the national hygiene program, it's actually not business as usual. It's actually geared towards the recovery of the economy in terms of COVID context, because money is being put in the hands of youth and women, so that they can be able to do the labor, but also earn money and spend it in the economy, so that we can grow the economy. So I don't know whether you're fair in that analysis you've said about the national government, because they're also looking at contractors who are doing some of the work, because really there has to be some work going on, and saying move away from machines, do labor intensive, get the youth, get the women, And I think that is a big plus, because that the resources that are being put in their hands are going to be spent in this economy and grow the economy the way other governments have done, like Australia.
Okay, Jackie, just as we talked about communication and in terms of what needs to be done, talking about home-based care and the preparedness when it comes to isolation or quarantine centers within counties, somebody sent a message in as we spoke, and Amos says, I'm COVID-19 positive, doing home-based isolation. No one from NMS or the Ministry of Health has come to check on me. And the people that I had contacts with had also tested positive. So, I mean, here we are looking at home-based care as an option, but here's a live example of how it could not be working so far. Looking at a policy on paper and then in terms of implementation, how then do we deal with issues like this?
I think
this is just one example. There could be many more floating out there.
That's a very good point. The truth of the matter is we don't have all the 7 Kenyans on speed dial. And I think that it's important. That one that you've raised, I think it's very important that, I don't know whether they've contacted, because, every county has its own system. So I don't know what the NMS team in Nairobi is doing, because they have community health volunteers up to Mukuru and everywhere, by the way. And even Nyumba Kumi people, because the Nyumba Kumi team is also helping us to trace and track. So there is somebody, it will not be 100% perfect, I can confess, but that person, it's important that they get in touch. I don't know whether they know the numbers. I also don't know them offhand.
They
but
clearly don't know
They don't know the numbers or what the protocol
And
is
also,
supposed to
Jackie,
be.
this person is among the statistics that are read out by the government on a daily basis. So the government knows that this person is COVID
Exists.
positive.
Even.
Maybe the government has missed that one statistic. So we may not be 100% sure. I think
If he tested positive, then the results have gone up somewhere to some government level.
I think it's important that the FM stations have all the numbers, so that if such a person says, you just tell them, please call this number. Right. So that the person, because it's, as we all say, it's about you.
It's all of us.
Expect the government to look out for us. It's each one of us taking care of ourselves and our neighbor and next. So I think the best thing is to have the numbers of the CHVs and the Nyumba Kumi persons.
All right. Jacqueline Mugani, the CEO of the Council of Governors, thank you very much for speaking to us today. We appreciate you taking some time to give us these insights.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Have a good day.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye, Wajiko.
All right, so we're coming to the top of the hour, the end of the show today. Final thoughts on this. Who goes first?
It seems to me that there's still, unfortunately, we're dealing in a situation where you're running after something. And there's a lot to be done, and this thing it just keeps going ahead. And you have so many things to pick up along the way.
Yep.
Okay. It's making the most of imperfect situation. I think there are lots of good people doing good work. It's not perfect communication and direction from government. We need money to go to the counties. But like Jackie said, everyone needs to pull in. I think the counties need to pull in, use the resources they have, like talk to community radio stations and utilize them, but also ourselves. So I think we all have to pull into this effort.
CT?
The worlds of the elders do not lock all the doors. They leave the right door open. In the case of what I've just been hearing, there is a story of the existence of doors. As to whether those doors really exist is a completely different story.
And whether they've even been left, whether there's a thought of leaving them open. It's another one altogether.
It opens into a wall.
It's a totally different story.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And some good news from next week, from Monday, the Situation Room will also be simulcasting on KTN Home. So you'll be watching this show on KTN Home again from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. We'll be on radio, we'll be on internet, we'll also be on TV on KTN Home. Same show, same vigor, same everything, just on TV as well. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock. See you tomorrow.